I think we should start. We should not be late now. What do you say, Dr. Richa?
Yes, Dr. Ajit. Let's go ahead.
Yeah, let's
Okay,
start,
sir.
and then the people will be joining.
Sure.
Yes, sir.
Yes, Rachna, please go ahead.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Good afternoon, everyone, and a very warm welcome back to the HEOR Vanguard Conference, the forum for industry leaders to bridge science, technology, and policy. I hope the lunch break was refreshing and you're all ready back to join us. I'm Rachna, and I'm delighted to be your host for this afternoon session. So, without any further ado, let's begin the session. So now it's my pleasure to introduce Dr. Ashish Mukherjee, the global head of market access and reimbursement for primary and specialty care at Menarini Group, based in Florence, Italy. He brings over 25 years of leadership experience across global pharma companies, including Sanofi, Merck, and Biocon Biologics. At Sanofi India, he led multiple business units, managed revenues in over $70 million, and won several regional and global awards for excellence in marketing and access initiatives. At Merck, he drove market access and affordability strategies across India, the US, Asia Pacific, leading landmark projects like the HCV elimination playbook and innovative patient financing models. At Biocon Biologics, he spearheaded global access, pricing, and tender strategies for biosimilars and digital therapeutics. Currently at Menarini, he leads global access and reimbursement strategies, shaping pricing governance, predictive analytics, and launching readiness across key markets worldwide. So before we begin, I would like to inform everyone that we have a Q&A session after this, so please keep your questions ready. So now please join me in welcoming Dr. Ashish Mukherjee, a visionary leader driving equitable access to innovative healthcare solutions across the globe. It's over to you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you for your kind introduction, Rachna. I
Thank you,
have to
sir.
share my screen, so it should work.
Sure.
Let me know whether you can see my screen.
Sir, we can see.
Okay, good. So without further ado, let's get into the discussion that thanks. And before that, I just would like to thank Richa and Dr. Ajit Singh also for the invitation. So it's a pleasure to talk to the participants here in this virtual conference for 3 days. Very interesting to be a part of it. So there are 2 parts of my presentation. One would we call it integrated evidence generation to support successful reimbursement strategy. The second part, which I'll cover, is all about leadership in market access. So what does that mean? How do you lead a market access as a function? And so there are 2 parts to it. So let's move to the first part, which is about integrated evidence generation and how do we support the reimbursement strategy. This is my disclaimer in terms of this is my own presentation, my own views, nothing to do with Menarini. And this is all provided as informational purpose only. And it should not be interpreted as a professional advice of Menarini, which I represent. So with that, let me understand whether how many of you would understand what is the market access objective. It's pretty simple, straightforward. Now, what it says that market access needs to ensure that patients get the access and the benefit of any new innovative products, services, medical devices as quickly as possible. So that's the job of market access. Why it is important? Because in order to generate or to get one product, an innovative product in the market now, I think by any stretch of imagination, you can imagine it costs billions of dollars. If it sits in the shelf and it does not reach out to the patients, that is the purpose of that product, then we are not doing our job. It doesn't make any sense if there is no access to the patients, the new innovation which we can bring in the market. So I'll repeat what I said. This is important for you to remember that we need to ensure patients can access the benefit of medical innovations as quickly as possible. Now, all of these lines are extremely important, but it is not that simple, straightforward. Of course, I need to mention that following the regulatory approval in each country, region, and each region, country has got a different pathway to do the regulatory approval. So let's look at that pathway first. So what if you move from the left to the right, you see starting from the lab to the clinical studies, and then the third pillar, what we call, or the third hurdle called regulatory approval, because all of them are important. So your clinical studies also should make a meaningful, statistically significant endpoints, which shows that it is better than the standard of care, or in terms of its efficacy, safety. And then, of course, you go to the regulatory bodies, like in Europe, where I come from right now, which is EMA, Medical Agency, Europe Medical Agency. So you get approval, FDA. Similarly, each country has their own regulatory bodies. Now, once that is done, the next part, which we call it the fourth hurdle, is to then our role comes in there, the market access role. And that role brings us the product to the patients finally, which you see at the right. Now, in order to do it, we have a couple of challenges. If you see on below the graph that there are budget constraints of the countries, so they might say that innovation is damn good, I accept, but well, I don't have the budget to fund this for the reimbursement. Pricing pressures, resourcing, it's a huge challenge. Then, of course, all of these lead to the delays. So therefore, our main role is the other two pieces which you see, to prepare for the health technology assessments, and also to support and plan strategically how early we can start the launch planning and for a successful launch of the product. So remember, we will again, in terms of, we'll refer to this as the market access as the fourth hurdle after you cross the first three hurdles before you reach to the patients, because finally, the patient is the central part of all that what we do in the pharmaceutical companies, because finally, if the product doesn't reach to the patients, we have failed in our job. Now, in terms of the different types of markets, what we call typically archetypes, depends on the healthcare funding, who funds it. Now, left to the right, if you see there are markets which you call the reimbursed market, that means what we call sometimes even single payer market, like most of the European countries, UK, Japan, Korea, a couple of examples which I have given. So there, the government, the authorities, they pay the entire amount. So there is nothing called co-pay or any out-of-pocket expenses. Take for an example like Japan or UK, everything is taken care of. In Italy, where I come from, everything is taken care of. It is not only the hospitalization, but also your daily medications. Like somebody on statin or anti-diabetic drugs, that is also reimbursed and it's free. There is no cost. Then there is a non-reimbursed market. When I say non-reimbursed market, that most of them are non-reimbursed, like 80%, 90% non-reimbursed. Like typically you have India, many African countries, CIS countries. It's not very, it is all out-of-pocket expenses. And then there are third bucket, which is like somewhere in between. They're trying to go into the reimbursed segment 100% because of the budgetary constraints and other restrictions. They're still somewhere in between, and we call it the Thailand and the Vietnam. These are the two countries which I can think of. Now, if I move further, and now going into the more evidence generation, this is pretty, important and critical. It's becoming more and more critical looking at the way the environment is changing. And what it says that earlier we were like each function within a pharmaceutical company is like your medical affairs, regulatory affairs, market access, marketing, commercial, all of them, they work in silos. And each one of us, in pharmaceutical companies, as you know, we thrive on data. Now, what we say that we need to shift from a siloed past to a collaborative future when we think about generating the evidence, what we call it value, to ensure reimbursement by addressing access barriers. Now, access barriers It's extremely critical here to remember, because access barriers are multiple access barriers are there, and particularly in Europe. And also there are markets in Asia like Taiwan, Korea, Australia. They would ask you, very difficult questions, looking at your clinical data, your economic data, or even humanistic data. So they will ask you questions when you submit your dossier, and they may say that please clarify this. So it is extremely important to see that, and not only that, each HTA process in each country is very different. So you need to really think collaboratively across all the functions. And how do we build the value story, the value narratives for the payers or the authorities, what we call it payers in market access? How do we build the value story so that the authorities are very clear that what value this product brings in compared to the standard of cares, and therefore they're willing to reimburse at a particular price. Now, this is important that it seems that there are a couple of studies which we looked at, and they're almost like, say, half of the commercial launch failures. When I say the launch failures, means compared to the forecasted or the planned, what they believe that it would achieve, it could not achieve. So that is what we call it a launch failure. Imagine the forecast was we will do like 1 billion within like 3 years. And after 3 years, if you see somewhere you are at 30 million or 40 million, we say that the launch definitely was not successful. Or the first year launch is extremely critical because a lot happens in the very first year. And 50% of that launch failures is linked directly to the lack of market access. And that is because of inadequate value generation, value planning. And it is because of these reasons. So therefore, now you understand the importance of generating value evidence for a successful reimbursement. Otherwise, there is a huge, huge chance of failing to get exactly what you planned. So it's a very critical fourth hurdle. And the HTA bodies, as I said, are becoming more and more critical about the value or the clinical or our argument, value argument we bring to them. So therefore, this is extremely important. And you also remember that, and you may be knowing that also, in order when we fail, it's a lot of value, in terms of the investment is at stake. So therefore, it is absolutely imperative to ensure that we have got the right planning. Now, this is the old way, as I mentioned to you already, because in order to have a very cohesive your value story, you need to be clear that you need to be, much in advance. You need to understand what are the value gaps. Now, in order to do that, you need to go away from your old way, which was reactive and the siloed. So you get the clinical data at some point of time from all the randomized clinical trials, goes to medical affairs, and medical affairs has got no role in market access, particularly submission, reimbursement. So they will sit on the data. By the time we get the data, it is too late for us. So 6 months, 8 months, 9 months before the submission, if we get the data, there's not much we can do. And therefore, that leads to the failure. And then therefore, and it is because of then we find the gaps in the value story much, much later during the entire process. So what we are saying the solution is in a very integrated approach and also very proactive approach. Start early. And the earlier approach was very slow, much delayed at the last minute, looking at now more dynamic, proactive framework, which will basically try to be proactive because you need to anticipate, knowing fully well, for example, how Germany will look at your data, how UK will look at your data, how France, Italy also will look at your, Korea will look at your data, your Australia, PBS will look at your data. So you need to anticipate, you need to engage with them. We need to understand that, okay, fine, if this is the way they are going to look at the data and this is my data, what are the gaps do I have and how do I fill in those gaps? And this is what we call it as a new way, which is more proactive and more integrated across all the functions. And to me, this is the most critical piece now And going forward, it will become even more critical piece in a very changing, rapidly changing environment across the world in terms of the way we are the assessment or because in Europe, if you recall, we have now joint clinical assessment. So they are going to do like not each country will do the HTA. There is a joint clinical assessment. So are we ready for it? How are they looking at your data? So this is important. Now, remember that a successful IEG plan, this is not just a particular study. This is a very strategic integration of multiple your evidence streams. Now, each pillar informs the others, creating a holistic, compelling narrative of value. Now, each word of this sentence is very, very critical. Super critical. I cannot re-emphasize this because if they do not talk to each other, it is not integrated, it is not well synergized, entire thing will fall apart. And by the time we get to know, we go to the pairs and we check with them, well, this is my value narratives, how do you see that? And if they say, oh my God, there are multiple gaps, and you don't have the time to generate data because you know that, and you will appreciate to generate data, it takes a while. You need to look at all kinds of data available, right from your, which is like now here, if you see the 5 pillars, what we call it, the first is your own randomized clinical trials. So how did we do the randomized clinical trials? Is it with an active comparator? Is it with only placebo? How big is the sample size? Is it statistically significant? What is the p-value, which is the hazard ratio? No, this is extremely critical. Did we meet the primary endpoints, the secondary endpoints? And all these primary, secondary endpoints, is it aligned with what payers would like to see? They said no. I mean, for an example, just to give an example, many a times, and it is much simpler example to give you, when you say that your cholesterol lowering drug reduces the LDL-C, many payers in Europe, they said, so what? Now tell me whether it makes any kind of difference in terms of the mortality or morbidity, which is your more impact on the overall health of population or a patient. So they are not happy with your LDL-C reduction because they say that many drugs, right from statin, they do the LDL-C reduction. Prove to me that this particular drug reduces the risk of having cardiovascular events. Now, if you do not have that data, you are in actually not a very strong position to get the reimbursement or also to get the right price. Come to the real world evidence generation or evidence. Now, this is also becoming more and more important for the payers and the authorities. Now, what kind of data which you looked at with these EMRs and demonstrate the real world effectiveness versus other products. So this is another very important piece. The third piece is the economic evidence. Have you done your thorough analysis in terms of your cost effectiveness, in terms of the budget impact, all kinds of health utility or cost minimization, all of these models, does it stack up? And then finally, what kind of patient reported outcomes, particularly the health related quality of life outcomes, and it is also becoming much more important today. Third, last piece, which is also, I must say, this is never underestimate this because sometimes we are blinded. We go look at the data without looking at exactly what the payers and the stakeholders are looking at it, what they would like to see that. So this is also important to engage with the payers much early during the process is the key. So usually in Europe, for example, almost like 1.5 years, 2 years, even if we do not have the phase 3 complete readout, you need to go and check with your peers to say that, well, this is my data. This is what we are planning to do this. What do you think about it? Where will you position our product? This is our belief. So this is extremely important. I'm not going into the details of each one of these points, but just to tell you, these are on the left-hand side, which you see the first the column. There are 4 pillars, 4 domains: clinical effectiveness, economic evaluation, patient and the social aspects, and the unmet medical need. And what are the key requirements in the middle? I think many of you would know this. When you're looking at the clinical effectiveness, what you're looking at it, So between, for example, placebo control versus an active comparator, of course, active comparator kind of double-blind placebo, double-blind crossover randomized clinical trial has got more scientific evidence compared to a plain and simple placebo-controlled trials. Randomized clinical trials is a gold standard. So each one of these, like what are the key requirements which you see for each one of these domains, and what kind of real-world evidence, real-world data generation application which are available. You are aware of the cost-effective analysis, budget impact models, what kind of PR instruments which you can actually measure before the launch, and you can submit as a part of the dossier. And of course, you do the literature review, what you call SLR, TLR, which I'm sure you must be aware of. Now, if I move further, so if we do all of these things well, what happens? Of course, we can minimize the delay of the launch. So therefore, the innovation is available to the patients. Those who are eligible to be treated with the drug can have an access to the drug quickly. We get an enhanced reimbursement in terms of the size of the population, and we continue to create a sustained value. And how do we plan? How early do we start the planning? There are 3 steps. Usually, we normally start with a kickoff with all the functions in one room, and we say we map each one of their data requirements. Once you have that alignment, you need to then create the prioritization because you may have a number of the data requirements, but you need to prioritize which one, like the top 3. And then you say, how do we develop all the 3? Can we develop all the 3? I mean, can we build all of these 3? And then finally, you need to execute and then keep tracking this. So there are 3 steps to start this entire process. Now, this gives you a little bit of an idea in terms of from the phase 2, earlier the better. The integrated evidence generation is the best way to do this, is to get engaged much early in the clinical trial program, like phase 2. When the phase 2 data is coming out, you should give your opinion or value that, okay, fine, if you go to the reimbursement, these are the criteria they're looking at. Are you measuring those criteria? So therefore, you think about this from the phase 2 to phase 3, you look at about the integrated evidence, you then plan the strategy, then you refresh somewhere in the launch, have we got whatever we wanted, and you keep refreshing. Because as I said, remember, the environment is changing for market access, reimbursement. So you need to be ahead of curve that what the countries are looking at it. And then, of course, as I mentioned there, it cuts across all the commercial functions, and regulatory, medical affairs, all the functions it cuts across. So everybody should be aligned here. Everybody should be in one room when you have this kind of discussion. Now, this is my first part. And the next, I think, couple of minutes I wanted to spend on leadership in market access. And remember, and this is a big shift. Earlier, market access used to be a doer. Like, you just do perhaps a couple of steps. You do the HTA submission. You look at the pricing negotiations. And then finally, you say that, okay, it is all done. Now, mark this very important thing now, the leadership role of a market access is a strategic influencer. And it's a combination of your technical mastery, that means the way you look at your technical part of it, and of course, your ability to influence the organizational leadership for the success in 2025 and beyond. Now, why am I saying this as strategic influencer? Because market access, still remember, is an evolving function. When I say market access, it includes all these stakeholders for market access. This is the part of the ecosystem for market access. You have the payers in each countries, each region. You have got HTA bodies. They are almost similar, I would say, payers, insurers, because it depends on which country you're talking about. Your payers could be different because he finally funds the reimbursement. Then HTA bodies, who typically the technical people, they look at your data carefully. Then you have got the patient access groups. This is also another piece which is becoming more and more vocal, and they have a very strong influencing ability for a reimbursement in Europe, particularly. There are many focus, the patient groups now, advocacy groups are available. Then there are IDNs who are finally the providers, particularly like in UK, you have this guy, the clinical pathways, real world data generation. Then you have the regulators. They look at the safety and the efficacy. Then you also finally have the physicians. Now, this is all that you need to do. I mean, you can imagine the role of a market access cutting across all these stakeholders. So it's a pretty complex ecosystem, and this ecosystem is not static. I'm repeating these words. It is not static. It's very dynamic. It's changing almost every month. Some new resolutions, some new laws coming in, either to make our life much more difficult, or somewhere there could be some ray of hope. So what are the various pillars of the leadership? One side, you need to have your evidence generation. And through the evidence, you can clearly show the value as a leader. And then you need to strategically align with your leadership. And finally, you go to the local markets. So you have a global plan, global strategy. And that you break it down in bit size for the countries to adapt, because their situation could be slightly different. So once you have a global strategy, global planning, global value generation, and then finally, and global in terms of your even modeling in terms of ICR, your cost effectiveness, budget impact, and then finally you do the local adaptation. So what are those technical masteries? So let's look at each one of them. I call it a hard skill. Of course, you need to be very strong in advanced economic and financial acumen. Your mastery in health economics, outcome research is absolutely must. Strong quantitative financial acumen, navigating the payer contracting, performing sophisticated financial modeling, and ability to the gross to net. So all of these things come into an ability to look at the data and analyze. And then, of course, not only that, you need to be even better in the context of changing the landscape with the advent of AI. Now, AI is actually coming, and I would say this is another very, very important thing which we must be good at. And we also we see the importance of it. And so data science and the predictive analytics expertise is also very critical. And last but not the least, the important part is also pricing strategy, value-based contracting strategy. So you have got, these are the hard skill. When I say the pricing strategy, you need to do the analogs. What kind of analog analysis? You looked at the last couple of years, what kind of launch in the same space. So again, you're doing the analysis, but you are also looking at what kind of value-based contracting you can do. So it is just not the price. Like, are you looking at some kind of risk-sharing agreements? Now you say, no, I only do only the first part, but I'm not aware of the last piece. Now, market access, the leader cannot say that. A leader has to have all of these three skills to be a leader in market access. So you can see it actually takes into account of all of these technical expertise. Then let's look at what are the soft skills. And this is, to me, it is extremely, extremely critical in today's context and going forward. The first is the policy influencing. Now, we know that, particularly in Europe and many other countries, the shaping the guidelines of any particular disease, like here, this is very guideline-driven treatment algorithm we have, which is called treatment pathways. It's not that you do whatever you feel like with your patients. So there is a very clear guidelines. Now, how do you shape the guidelines? And for that, you need to be mindful of who are the stakeholders, right from key opinion leaders, key thought leaders, scientific leaders, at the same time, some of the policy makers. So for example, the European Commission in Europe, the stakeholders there is very important. Then there are multiple other industry bodies that are important. Various industry, other platforms are important. So what kind of policy shift are we expecting in future? What kind of funding it might have to support a particular disease, like a rare disease, cancer, or maybe like even I would say anti-infectives, because antimicrobial resistance is becoming a huge problem across the world. So we need to be good at. So not only, which I said in the previous slide, the three technical part of it, which is the hard skills, this is another piece, and then cross-functional orchestration. So if you are not good in collaborating as a leader, it's very difficult to operate in market access or to lead market access in a company. So you should be extremely strong in leading medical affairs. And when you do this, it is not, remember, this is not because of the hierarchy. It is because the way you bring the value in the discussion. And that would give you the leadership edge over others. And finally, this even also you need to be comfortable, very, very confident to speak to the CEOs, COOs, or various very senior leadership in the organization. And you need to understand that for them, you need to communicate in a very different value which the new product will bring in. So you should do all of these things well. Your strategic influence, which is extremely important. And now this is just a kind of a spider diagram, and you see on the left hand side a small cartoon which says earlier we were like a gatekeeper. We do the approval of well the reimbursement dossier, we go through it, we say yeah it is good, go and submit. And then from there, we are saying that we are moving towards the value architect position. So we are creating the value for a successful reimbursement strategy. So you see the strategic thinking, cross-functional influence, value communication. These are the soft skills. Similarly, policy pricing, HEOR, payer HTA knowledge are some of the most important skills one should have as a leader if you want to become a value architect. So I'm coming to the end of my presentation. So let's say what are the 3 key takeaways. Now, I love these 3, the rule of 3. So the first thing is that the consequence of lack of securing reimbursement, as I mentioned to you in the beginning, for any new innovative drug is a significant to the tune of few billions of dollars. And remember, if this fails, there are some small biotech companies can go bankrupt to that extent. Okay, they go bankrupt. So let me highlight that. So this is extremely critical for us to remember that. So therefore, the consequence is pretty significant. So therefore what? Therefore, we need to be collaborative. We need to then focus on generating evidence value much in advance so that we are able to, and our risk of not getting the right reimbursement comes down drastically. And that's our job. That's the job of, and that is what we do through integrated evidence generation. And finally, that is what I already mentioned. Our role is evolving market access and the leadership in market access from a typical gatekeeper to value architect or a strategic influencer. So this is, I think, the end of my presentation. And maybe I would like to close this with a small quote. Many of you have already seen it. And it reminds me also that if we cannot unlearn, relearn, then we'll become irrelevant at some point of time. So with that, thank you so much. Waiting for question and answers. I guess I'm on time.
Yes, Ashish, an amazing, wonderful session. I so wish I had the opportunity to learn this at the earliest stage of my career, but nonetheless, it was so mesmerizing listening to you, Ashish. I think people have started asking. Rachna, would you like to ask?
Ma'am, should I read the questions?
Yes, please. So
Okay.
Sharmila has put up some questions, right? In your experience, what are the most
Yes.
common? You can please read out them to Ashish.
Yeah. Yes, ma'am. Okay, sir. In your experience, what are the most common barriers faced when generating integrated evidence for market access, and how can teams proactively overcome them?
Yeah, that's a very, very relevant question. So what we see that as the main key barriers is the way particularly the lack of understanding of the payer needs very early stage by the companies. Imagine an US company developing a product, but they would like to be successful in Europe or in Asia. without any understanding of what the payers in Europe or payers in, say, Australia or Korea, they are looking at when they do the HTA. As a result of that, what happens, the way you design your clinical program may not satisfy the payers. For an example, just to give an example, in Germany, if you want to succeed, they do not like placebo-controlled clinical trials. But if your plan is to do that, and there was no plan to put an active comparator, they are not very happy. So if you, with that, now you come after like phase 3 and you say, hey guys, now there's a, there's a product, there's an asset, this is an innovative product, but well, this is a placebo control. Now, this is one such barrier. So the designing the clinical study, the program, and the right clinical program in terms of the matching the needs of the payer. So if it is not matched, that is, to me, is the biggest barrier which we face. In every day, I face this. The second barrier is that sometimes even the data what we have, it is also looking at, particularly in terms of the duration, for an example. Like, somebody says that, oh, okay, you have this, as I mentioned to you, LDLC reduction is there, but the cardiovascular outcome data is not available. So that is another gap. So many times you are looking at some of the endpoints which are not not relevant for the payers. They want to look at more patient-reported outcomes, more as an authentic endpoints. So these are the two. And the third one, we get it also quite late. Sometimes the data comes quite at the end of our submission. So that is also we need to be mindful of. These are the three key barriers which we face. And of course, the funding also of some of the products, like, of course, the cancer care, and also with a rare disease, you may get a funding, you get a better population, faster access. But some of the other products, the delay in getting market access, there are countries like for example, Portugal. Once you submit your dossier, it might take even 18 months to 24 months to get it reimbursed. So 24 months when the rest of the other European markets have already got the product reimbursed and being used by the patients, in Portugal, it will be delayed by 24 months. So the patients in Portugal will not have an access. So the delay, the entire process takes huge amount of time. So these are the couple of barriers which we face day in and day out. And this is true in Asian markets as well. So though I'm talking about Europe, this is true for Australia, could be true for Japan. Japan is a little faster, but you need to be prepared how Japan looks at your the data, the HTA process.
Thank you, sir. And we have one more question. Akanksha Verma is asking, good afternoon, sir. Thank you for such an insightful session. What evidence would you give to emerging HEOR or market access leaders seeking to drive innovation in UK reimbursement strategy?
UK.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, the UK is very interesting. In UK is like absolutely, it is called cost effectiveness driven. So if you are not good at getting that your ISAR within the threshold, and this threshold also has been there for many, many years, the same thresholds, the industries are not very happy with the threshold. But you need to be very good in terms of building your cost effectiveness model very, very strongly when you submit to the NICE. And if you are above threshold, your reimbursability, the opportunity comes down. And so therefore you need to give, and then when you're building the cost effectiveness model, before that you do the SLR, TLR, and wherever you do not have head-to-head comparator or comparative trials, then you need to do maybe indirect treatment comparisons or new meta-analysis. So you need to go through crunching a lot of data. So get your cost-effective analysis. And then when you go to the regions, to the hospitals, then again, you need to think of the budget impact, because they're looking at their budget and they need to manage within their budget. So in UK, to succeed, the reimbursement is to start early, work on your cost effectiveness model. Wherever you understand there are data gaps, see how do you breach the data gaps and get a very watertight your cost effective models out, because UK is very clear, very straightforward in terms of the cost effectiveness analysis.
Yes,
I see there are
and
some
we have one
questions
more
even in
question.
the chat also.
Yes, yes,
Yes,
Ashish. Maybe Rachna, you can read Shanmuga's question. It's an interesting
yes,
one.
ma'am.
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am. Shanmugapriya has a question. Sir, you mentioned that leadership in market access requires navigating both internal and external forces. For someone at an early stage career with strong vision and willingness to do the hard work, but without access to capital or a network yet, what actions build early influence and credibility in this field?
Very, very good question, because we all face, because when I started in market access way back in 2011, honestly, even my managing director in India never understood exactly what I do. So he hired me, but he was not sure exactly what I do. So he kept on asking me exactly, Ashish, tell me, can you explain to me what exactly do you do in India at that point of time in 2011? I'm talking about 14, 15 years ago. Now, therefore, my guidance would be to you is that as an early leader, you need to be very strong with what you are saying, particularly your data. So the first thing is your data. You need to be at the top of the data. And you also must know about the knowledge about the pairs. These two things are very important. What pairs are looking at it and what you have in your hand. These two things. If the pair expectation is A, but in your hand you have B, it doesn't match. And this you should be able to communicate to your leadership. They may have a huge expectation from B, but you say, no, 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 but actually the pairs are looking at A. So you need to be able to communicate to your leadership, say, hey, you know what? Because we come under huge amount of pressure. There's a no, Ashish, because we open the door. If we fail to open the door, the marketing has got very less work to make it successful. So you need to be very clear to communicate to them very early in the process. As I mentioned, the planning starts almost 24 months before the launch, and you must insist that at least before 24 months, we should sit down with the data together, look at the gaps, the value gaps, start building your narratives, do early cost effectiveness model, whatever phase two data you have, and then communicate effectively because sometimes what happens, I have seen in the leadership, they do not understand HEOR. He may be a commercial guy. It's our role to explain it to them in the language they understand. So that's a soft skill which I spoke. So it's not about talking about a whole lot of jargons about our HEOR because, okay, I don't know what you're talking about, ISAR. What is ISAR, by the way, Ashish? Okay, so the one side is your knowledge about your product, the data. The other part is the knowledge about the pairs. They're looking at it and how do you breach this? And then you flag, these are the barriers, these are the drivers. We have this, which is good, but this is which we need to breach. And therefore, you can communicate effectively to your leadership.
Thank you, sir. And we have one more insight. A fascinating session on market access. To be a strategic influencer, could you please enumerate 3 hard and soft skills? And also, how would you navigate presenting yourself between payer and pharma company that you represent?
On the three already I have presented, maybe you can once again take a look at that because hard skill and soft skill, both I mentioned in my 2 slides. So I because of the paucity of time, I don't want to repeat. But the fact is that in the hard skill is all about technical part of knowledge about all of these, which I mentioned, your HEOR, then your patient reported outcomes, and then AI enabled strategies. So you need to understand all of these. And when you're talking to the payers, the most critical part in Europe and elsewhere is early engagement with the payers. Try to understand their mind. If you do it 6 months in advance, you will fail for sure. It's a perfect recipe to fail. This process starts maybe 1.5 years in advance. So you start 24 months. In 6 months, 8 months, you come to like a draft, my first initial strategy, whatever data I have based on that. With that, go to a pair, and there is a process to do it. Every at least in Europe, there is a process, very laid out process. You fix an appointment, you give them the pre-read, they do their own thing, and they will come back to you on a virtual meeting or a face-to-face meeting. They will tell you, well, this is the data, then these are our concerns. You have a placebo control. I'm not very happy with it. I will compare with the lowest priced generics. So your innovation, which has costed you a couple of billions of dollars, but the price which they are willing to pay you maybe in few cents because they don't see the value in your product. So therefore, these are the important. So early engagement with the payers. What are those influencing areas? What they're looking at it to understand that, and then you go back to your drawing board, and then plan accordingly, and then submit. This is important. So proactively work, engage with the payers to make it a more watertight, successful reimbursement plan.
Yes, sir. And dear participants, if you have any more questions, please drop in the chat box or you can unmute yourself too.
And maybe Richa, another thing which I can do in case during the 3 days, if there are any more questions, you can write to me and I can go back and then you can share with the participants. That is also possible.
That would be wonderful, Ashish. We really, really thank you for taking out time for us. And Rachna, maybe we can close Dr. Ashish's session now. And sir, thank you so much for being there with
Yes,
us.
ma'am.
Thanks a lot. Wish you all the very best for the rest of the day. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, sir.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you so much, Mr. Ashish Mukherjee, sir. It was an insightful and wonderful session. So now it's my absolute pleasure to move on to the next speaker of the day. So we welcome Dr. Mayura Deshpande, the Medical Director for the UK and Ireland at Ferring Pharmaceuticals. Dr. Deshpande is an accomplished physician with extensive experience across clinical practice, research, and medical affairs leadership. She began her journey with the NHS, later serving as principal investigator at Medinova Research, where she has led several ethically driven and patient-focused clinical trials. Over the years, she has held key leadership roles with renowned global pharmaceutical companies such as Almirall, Lundbeck, Janssen, and Eisai, contributing significantly to medical strategy, evidence generation, and scientific engagement across multiple therapy areas, including immunology, neuroscience, and oncology. She also serves on board of examiners at the Faculty of Pharmaceutical Medicine, reflecting her commitment to advancing professional standards and nurturing future leaders in the field. Today at Ferring Pharmaceuticals, Dr. Deshpande continues to embody the true essence of partnership, building meaningful connections between science, strategy, and patient care. Before we begin, I would like to inform that we have a Q&A session after this, so please keep your questions ready. And now we are delighted to have with us this afternoon. Please join me in warmly welcoming Dr. Mayura Deshpande to share her thoughts on medical affairs, a journey towards partnership. The stage is all yours, ma'am.
Thank you so much. Morning, afternoon, evening, everyone. Obviously, I'm in the UK, so it's early in the morning. I've just had my cup of tea, but I hope that you are all ready to get a little bit more understanding about medical affairs. So obviously, this is a health economics real world evidence conference. We just heard our renowned speaker earlier talking about collaborative working. And I think one of the essential collaborative partners is our medical affairs team. So I'm just going to present like a very top overview of what does medical affairs mean, how did we come about, what are some of the activities we do along the life cycle of the drug, but also where we are on the journey to becoming a partner, strategic partner. So sorry, Richard, do I share my screen or how does it work?
Yes,
Try
ma'am, you can
sharing, Dr.
share your
Mayura.
screen.
See, there's a green button at the bottom of the screen. With
Yeah. So yeah, I can do it. Yeah.
Yes, please.
Okay. And just let me know when you can see my screen.
We can. You
Okay,
can make it
perfect.
full screen. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. Thanks,
All
Dr.
good?
All yours.
Brilliant. All right. Thank you so much. So again, very warm welcome for everyone, all the participants to this conference. And also thank you so much for inviting me as a speaker here. It's really nice to kind of be able to share my experience of what medical affairs has been, how we are currently evolving, and what I would see medical affairs to be in the future. So I'm just going to kind of speak for about hopefully 25-30 minutes, but I would like to have a lot of time for Q&A. And again, Rich, I'm more than happy to kind of answer any questions as we go beyond even the rest of the conference. I'm more than happy for people to drop me an email. So the title of my talk is Journey to Partnership, and I'm hoping that as we go along the presentation, you would understand what I mean by that. So before we go into the presentation, maybe I can ask a quick question and people can put it in the chat. Does anyone know or have a very vague idea of roughly how long it takes for a drug to come out from the clinical development to be marketed in the market? Roughly how long is the stage of clinical development? Any idea? 15? Years. Yeah, of course. Yeah. Yeah. So I think that's roughly about it. It takes somewhere around 10 to 15 years. And it's a really, really intense process. So we start somewhere in a lab, in a petri dish, or under some AI generated model where they come up with a really exciting biochemically synthesized molecule. And then obviously they go through the different stages of clinical development. As you can see from the slide here, we start somewhere around like 10,000 molecules, and then after 15 years of just development, it's about a drug, one drug, which actually gets to the marketing. So it's a really intense process. There are multiple teams involved. And I think where you probably will feel is medical affairs probably doesn't fit into this, but where we are now currently moving, medical affairs actually fits into very early clinical development stages as well. So we are now actually the bridge between R&D, so research and development, and commercial. And why I say that is because we have the expertise in science. We have the expertise in understanding of the therapy area. We have the expertise from the disease perspective. We have our major kind of stakeholder, which are the patients. So we understand their needs, the unmet needs. We also understand the marketplace. So we essentially can feed into R&D, is in maybe protocol development or endpoints decision making and things like that. We are obviously involved in kind of facilitating sites, initiation of sites, and also involved in clinical trials. So right from when the clinical trials start to right from when till up to the drug is where the drug is marketed, I think the medical affairs is integral part of the entire process. We are involved in education. We are involved in making strategic decisions. We are involved in having stakeholder interactions. And when I say that, it's internal and external. And then we are also involved, as we heard earlier, Dr. Mukherjee saying about real world evidence, integrated evidence. And I think we are, again, a very integral part of that as well. So we really are kind of the bridge between R&D and commercial. And this is how I see medical affairs. So this is a very personal representation of medical affairs. I think it's very commonly understood amongst the medical affairs fraternity that we have different pillars and which are our strengths and which are kind of our areas of expertise. But this is my personal thinking about where we need to work, in which parts we need to work as a medical affairs team. So at the top is our main stakeholder, the patients or the caregivers. Because we work across different therapy areas, sometimes we can't forget, for example, if you're working in dementia, you cannot forget caregivers. So if you're developing a drug, maybe you need to definitely consider the unmet need for the patients, but also consider unmet need for the caregivers as well. What can we do to maybe help them? What could be some of their concerns when they're looking after or caring for these patients? So the first one is leadership. As I said, we are involved. We are a strategic partner in talking about strategic plans, brand plans, and we are involved in all the governance. So, for example, looking after the entire processes, looking after compliance. In the UK, it's a very highly regulated industry. pharmaceutical companies have to follow a PMCP or ABPI code of practice, which is really, really highly regulated code of practice, which does come down from FPR code of practice. So we have to essentially set up that governance. So that is also a job of medical affairs. Data generation, I think we have been talking about this for most of the morning. But medical affairs is key partners in understanding what data needs to be generated. What is the unmet need? Where is the gap? How can we get that developed? Is it through a SLR? Is it through a consensus statement? Is it a white paper? There are multiple ways of developing evidence. So that's essentially where medical affairs comes in for data generation. But we don't stop at data generation. We also have to do something called as data dissemination planning. So what do you do once the data is there? Of course, one way is to use it for your market access application, but how then you utilize it for your marketing team. So you have to also consider data dissemination plans. And that is basically data communication. So what do we do with all this data we have? How do we communicate it in the right and the compliant way? So what kind of claims do we add in our marketing materials? Which kind of data is important for our healthcare professionals to know? Which data in which form needs to be presented to different stakeholders? So all of that is also a key expertise that medical affairs brings. One thing is also important when we are thinking about all these things is insights. We all know the market is very, very quickly evolving. So there is a very high pace of medicines coming in. There's data. I mean, if you search PubMed today for any therapy area and then you do the same search a week later, I can guarantee you there are at least 2 or 3 more papers added to the PubMed. And that just shows that there's just so much activity happening in this space, which is really good because we are all about evidence generation. We are all about evidence decision making. But I think for us as as medical affairs kind of expertise people, one thing we are also kind of important, or one thing important for us to do is how we bring the insights, how we share the insights, and actually what do the insights tell us? What do we need to do? How do we need to change our strategy? Because the market is saying something else, the insights are saying something else. We don't want to be stuck in our house where we say, this is our strategy, and now we're going to follow it regardless of what happens to the market. So it's like a big ship which you're constantly turning while you're in it. So it's a medical affairs job to make sure that we are bringing that insights. And the reason for that is, as I said, we are scientific experts. We understand the disease area better. We understand the unmet need of the patients and the caregivers. So we are best placed people to go and have this conversation with healthcare professionals, ask them questions, what's going to be important for you, what's going to be important for your patients, bring that back, and then put different tactics in place. Could be, we can do a evidence generation activity. You can do something like a educational meeting. So how do we address that unmet need? How do we now actually address that insight that we have captured? So that is also a medical affairs expertise. And stakeholder engagement. I think it's kind of absolutely imperative in today's world that you cannot be in a siloed function. You have to work with your peers, you have to work with different functions, marketing, market access, sales team. You have to work with everyone internally, but externally, there are just so many stakeholders that you constantly have to keep in mind when you're doing any project. So that's again something that medical affairs is really well placed to kind of do at multiple levels. And below all of this, obviously, you have your metrics, which is very important because you need to be able to actually define what I have done. That has that brought any value? Should I continue doing it? Should I change it in any way? Compliance, as I say, most of the industry across the world is highly regulated. We have different codes in different parts of the country. In UK, we follow the PMCPA. So we have to ensure that everything we do is as per compliance. And then we also have to make sure that we have our own talent, which is developed, and our own capabilities, which are developed. So again, the underlying training for the team. So these are how I see the medical affairs pillars. So our priorities are critical priorities, as I said, cross-functional governance. We cannot work in a siloed function, because everything, as I said earlier, we're the bridge between R&D and commercial. So everyone in between is a stakeholder. So we have to make sure we are able to partner with every single function and actually work with them to define their needs and how can we meet their needs, and also at the same time managing our stakeholders, our main stakeholders, which are our patients. So we are involved in doing brand plan activities. We are involved in doing multiple stakeholder engagement plans for our different, say for example, if you're looking at a market access submission, then who will be our stakeholders, working with them for clinical overviews or expert statements and things like that. Formalized process, we are very important in kind of keeping processes in place, and that actually helps to kind of help with the governance, because if there's no process in place, then people are doing different things. It's one of the kind of the challenging tasks of actually bringing everyone together, and I think medical affairs is really good at doing that because we set processes. We cannot forget technology. The world is moving fast, faster than I can move myself. But it's all about, I think a few years ago, it was about omni-channel. I don't know if you've heard that phrase, but it was more around, you can't just have activities which are in person. You have to have like a digital asset to it. So you have to start doing like some digital things, social media interactions, and then you still have to keep your face-to-face interactions. But now it's all about AI. And we have to kind of make sure that we bring somewhere the AI functions which will kind of align with our governance structure. And it's not very easy, I have to say. I have been working with some AI organizations who are putting up some conferences in the US, and it's very difficult to see how we can get those two to match. We are, in most companies, medical affairs is a very lean function. And if you have heard me, we do a lot of activities. So we also need to make sure that we manage our resources better. I am a very strong believer in doing things that add value, because yes, we want to do the world. We want to do a lot of things, but what is the real value in doing two things? Maybe let's do two things, but do it really well and get a maximum value out of it. So I think sometimes we have to have that very discussion, a critical discussion about resourcing. Where do I invest my time and energy? And skills and mindset. I think this is probably something which is an evolving skill for medical affairs. Because we are very scientific people, most of the people in medical affairs you'll see will be either medics, scientists, or pharmacists by background. So they are very much coming from a space of patient care. They're very much coming from a science space background. So for us to kind of move in the whole spectrum and understand a little bit about business acumen, it has taken time, and everyone goes on that journey in their own way. Even for me, I think it took me a couple of years to actually understand this whole thing about commercial. What does business acumen mean? And it's an essential skill. We cannot undo or we can't not do it, because we are a part of a commercial working environment. So we have to kind of change and adapt to the skill and mindset. As I said, we have, internal stakeholders range from R&D to market access, commercial, marketing, sales, all of the above. But our external, and this is just, I think, a very brief representation. I'm sure I have missed somebody in there because there are just so many stakeholders we constantly have to juggle. And every stakeholder has very different expectations from you. So how do you manage it? How do you manage expectations, your external stakeholders? All the way from your product development to the life cycle management of the drug. And when I say life cycle management, when a drug is marketed, obviously you have the launch, and then you have a couple of years where the drug is properly marketed. And then after some time, there'll be generics coming in and things like that. So the drug is going to kind of go down. So that's almost like the life cycle of the product. But medical affairs has a role, and I think I'll show that in the next few slides exactly what we do. But these are some of the stakeholders we have to work with. Like, I think we've already discussed about doing market access submissions. We work very closely with our market access colleagues. We work very closely with, in the UK, NICE and SMC. So NICE, I think everyone is familiar with. It is the UK HTA body. And SMC is the Scottish HTA body. We also have one in Wales, but they normally follow the NICE guidelines or the NICE decisions. So we really work very closely with them to come up with clinical overview sections, to come up with expert statements and things like that. Regulatory authorities throughout the life cycle, when a drug is submitted, when a dossier is submitted rather to any regulatory authority, they will send a question which is called as request for information. So they'll send in loads and loads of questions. And medical affairs teams are the best place to answer those questions because, as I said, we are the only function which is the bridge between R&D and commercial. So we need to be able to understand every single question. I mean, the documents we have to sometimes read 600 pages long, but that's how we have to be. Because we are experts, that's where we are best placed. So there's just loads of stakeholders that we have to constantly manage. Patients, as I said, is at the top there, but we have to kind of make sure that our activities enable to have the value for individual stakeholders depending on what we are doing, but we have to make sure that our primary stakeholder, the patients, are always benefiting from it. So this is how medical affairs work. So what exactly we do from launch to 2 years. So when a drug is launched, essentially there's, as I said, because we have a good understanding of the drug from the clinical development phases, we are the best place to be able to actually start talking about launch plans. So we are involved in brand plans. So this is like a plan that every product will have for their own brand, for their own medicine, which involves quite a few things. There is a SWOT analysis, there is a stakeholder map, and all those things. But medical is involved critically to kind of actually bring our insights in and say, well, this is what the market is saying. This is where the unmet need is. This is what has happened with the competitors. So I think this is where we need to be doing something because this is an unmet need, which is going to help our brand, which is going to help the company, which is going to help the patients. And I think that's where we are kind of really critically placed. The insights I've already kind of talked about. We have to constantly generate insights. I mean, on a quarterly basis, we set up like something called as listening priorities, which are for our MSLs, which are medical science liaisons, who are the field-based medical affairs experts. And they are essentially constantly gathering these insights, and then we bring them back into the organization to move and change our strategy. We do have a really strong stakeholder engagement plan. And the way I work with my team to come up with the stakeholder engagement plan is to look at where the stakeholder is in their journey of what do they want, and then where we can maybe support them to get to where they want. And then we look at maybe there are different tiers of stakeholders. So maybe there are a national level, a regional level, an international level. So we kind of take maybe 5 or 6 stakeholders per year. And then we kind of work on specific plans to how can we get them from point A to point B based on what they want to achieve in their life. For example, some healthcare professionals want to be involved in publications. So if we are involved in a RWE study, then we will work with them because then it's a give and take. We get something from their expertise, but then they get a name on the publication. So that's how we work with stakeholders. Training is something very important. We are constant. If there's any training needed in the company, I think medical affairs is the best place function to be able to deliver the training. We train the internal teams, we train our sales force, and that has to be an ongoing thing because you can't just train them once and then forget about it because, again, as I said, market is evolution. It's an evolution of the market. You have to constantly be staying on pace of what's happening outside. So we have to constantly train everyone whenever there's a change in the market, when there's a change in a competitive landscape, then we have to ensure that our teams are trained enough so that when we go out, we seem credible when we're having conversations. And then, as I said, we are an important partner function because we help in material generation. We ensure that the compliance is maintained across all stages. If there's a meeting, we help in speaker briefings. And when I say by that, when we ask speakers to speak at a conference or a meeting, they want to speak about different things. But say, for example, they want to know a little bit about the data, or they want to understand a little bit about the data, then our field medical experts go in and basically they are best placed again to kind of give them that overview of whatever this data means, and work with them. There's also something called as objection handling. I think it's a very, very kind of a typical commercial activity. It's more like something like, why is my drug better than your drug? This is how marketing teams work. It's all about differentiation, because unless you are the only class of medicine out there, you're always fighting for the market share. And as I said, it's a mindset. We are in a commercial environment, so we have to be able to kind of change the way we work and think. And year to year 5 and on, it depends on the product life cycle. It depends on the product indication. But again, evidence generation becomes a main activity. We have to constantly come up with different real world evidence generation plans to be able to address the unmet need or to differentiate yourself from the other competitors. One of the other things we work on is indication expansion. So looking at, along with our regulatory teams, looking at how can we expand this current indication? Is there any unmet need that maybe our drug will be able to address? So again, this is possible because we know the drug from its clinical development stage. So we can actually work with the regulatory to look at, oh, there's an unmet need, our drug can do this, and then work on a license extension. We always, as I said, stakeholder engagement is a very, very important aspect of our role. But now the omni-channel approach is all about, it can't just be face-to-face. You have to bring in the digital aspect, you have to bring in the social media, and you have to try and reach or create a customer journey across multiple points in their life cycle, essentially. And we are, as I said, a partner function, because we provide value to all the other functions in everything that we do. So where we are heading is, as I said, the patient is at the center of everything that we do. We focus on the disease. We don't forget our patients. We don't forget the holistic care that a patient needs, because I think if you look at any indication, any patient, there is of course the treatment, but then there is a holistic care that is needed, and medical affairs needs or has to think about the holistic care. It's not just about the product, which is why I enjoy it, because my life or my role is not just restricted to thinking about the patient in its, oh, how is my medicine going to work? It's about, okay, what exactly is this patient need? So we are really well placed to do that. We, as I said, we are experts in disease, we're experts in therapy area. We are best placed to enable patients to get these effective treatments and help identify unmet needs and address them. We are credible and unbiased. And what I mean by that is, one thing I am very proud of being in medical affairs is, although we work in a commercial environment, one advice I had received very early on in my career is, Mayura, you're a medic by heart and always stay a medic by heart. And what that means is, I can't forget that my job in this role is to make sure that I always keep the patient in front of me. And that's why I'm always unbiased. If somebody says something to me, I am more than happy to question them and have that very challenging conversation about, but this is not going to be the best result for the patient. So I think that's why medical affairs are very unbiased function, because we are very close to patients than the market. And that's why we come across like a very credible function, because we are science experts. And that's why we are able to generate trust and collaboration. I think collaboration is one word probably you will hear throughout the next 3 days, because all these functions that work in the pharmaceutical industry, none of them can function by themselves. We all have to collaborate with each other. There is no way I can sit in my own box and not work with marketing or market access, because I will not be able to achieve all the wonderful things that I do. So collaboration is a key word for everyone in pharmaceutical industry. And these are some of the activities we do, making sure it's all patient-centric. Digital health is something which is coming in more and more. Just kind of we have digital apps for patients so that they can obviously have record their functions or record their blood results or some whatever it is, depending on the therapy area. And then patient care experience, again, something which is very newly coming is, we do, I think few years back, we weren't doing a lot of patient-centric activities. but now we are doing targeted patient-centric activities. So doing surveys with patient organizations, understanding what is the need for the patients, and then actually bringing it back into the company and saying, actually, patients don't want this. We need to do something very different, because our end user, our main consumer, is not the healthcare professional. Our consumer is the patient, because the healthcare professional is just a means to get your medicine to the patient, but your medicine is never used by the healthcare professional, it's used by the patient. So it's important to keep that in mind, that our consumers are the patients, so we need to do things for them. Some of the challenges, compliance, although it's really important because we need to have some form of governance in place, sometimes it can be very, very difficult to interpret, especially in the UK. The code is not black and white. There are many gray areas, and then it comes down to interpretation. And depending on where you are in your experience of medical affairs, you are a little less and less pragmatic. So you are less averse to taking risks. So you are taking everything which is like a very risk averse approach. And that can be a little bit complicated when you're having conversations with especially your marketing colleagues, but it's a challenge that we face. And it's also the understanding of compliance is patchy across different functions. And it's almost felt like medical affairs is the police officer. We are the owners of compliance, which is not true, because we're all working in the pharmaceutical industry. And the code is for the industry, it's not for the medical affairs team of the industry. So I think the understanding of who owns compliance also causes problems. Converting data into usable or actionable things for marketing, I think this is a very important one, might be very specific for UK. In the UK, we cannot use anything which is outside of our SMPC or outside of our product indication in marketing materials, because essentially it's considered to be off-label. And then the marketing or the sales team cannot talk of any off-label products or any off-label things in your product. So when you're putting an RWE plan together, you have to really bear that in mind. Like, how is this going to be able to move the boat for the marketing team? So it's just something that we have to constantly bear in mind. But everybody knows that when a drug comes out, doctors will do weird and wonderful things. They will kind of use it in different indications. They will use it in different doses, and they go by their experience and their habits. So I think it's just kind of something to bear in mind when you're putting your RWE plan together. Because I said medical affairs is a scientific expertise, skills function, it's very difficult for us to prove return on investment, because compliance wise, at least in the UK, I can't say that just because my field MSL was having a conversation with a healthcare professional, we increased the sales by 2%. I can't say that. So it's very difficult to constantly prove the return of investment on any activities that we do, because we can't bring it back to the monies. So we have to show value in different ways. There are different ways, but I think most of the world always thinks about the money, and we can't prove return of investment on the money. Because we do so many things that I have talked about for the last almost 15-20 minutes, there is a fatigue. We are mostly very, very lean functions. So we do end up doing a lot of things. And I think the team's always kind of not able to kind of prioritize because the asks are too many. And as I said, that sometimes cross-functional collaboration can be tough because everybody has different needs. Nobody understands our priorities. Everybody's priorities are important. And then we have to essentially be able to kind of manage those expectations at various skills. Also, once we have worked with a cross-functional team, sometimes it's also difficult to get the follow through. Like we have worked with them on something, they go on, do that, but then never come back and actually give us the feedback on, was it helpful? Did it bring any value? So that could be a challenge. What we need to do to succeed is have a strategic vision and leadership, a forward-looking approach. Where are we going? We can't be working in our silos. How can we be a really strategic partner? You cannot forget digital. It's where the world is moving. AI is coming in real fast, so we can't be left behind. We have to think of how do we bring in innovation. We have to be the trusted partner. So how do we do that? We need to co-create solutions. We need to demonstrate value in everything that we do. We have to have a patient-centric approach. That's non-negotiable. And we have to deliver outcomes which will create impact. But it's also important to understand how we measure those KPIs? How do we measure that? How are we bringing value to our stakeholders? And as I said, in absence of being able to do that in return of investment from money's perspective, they have to be a little bit more creative. Where I see medical affairs evolution is we started by getting things right, doing the right things. Then we became more integrated into the different functions. We were respected for our input. We were almost moving towards the partner. So now I think we are in a phase, we're somewhere between integrated and partner in this stage, I believe. But we are coming to a stage where we can be a partner, where we are co-leading on strategy. We are co-building things within the company. And that is going to help us to actually show the impact that we can bring. How can we bring in that patient-centered approach? And I think eventually we want to become the leaders for future. How can we be the leaders to be able to bring the entire pharmaceutical industry into patient-centered approach? And I just love this quote. It's something which I absolutely believe is the right thing. Medicines is for the patient. Medicine is for the people. It's not for the profits. And I understand, again, as I say, we work in a commercial environment, but if we do the right things for of our patients, then the profits will follow. So always keep this quote in mind by George Merck. It's really, really helpful, and it will always make you think, how can I do the right thing? I think that's it from me. So I'm going to stop sharing and yeah, open the floor for questions.
Thanks, Dr. Mayura. That was really engaging and amazing. It was so nice, mesmerizing to hear you. So with this, we open the floor for any questions. Please, guys, feel free to ask. We don't get to talk to Dr. Mayura so often, right? So
Absolutely. Guys, please ask questions.
Yeah.
If there are no questions, means I did a good job.
Absolutely.
Anyways, Dr.
That's true.
Mayura, there's no question about this, right? So, yeah.
Do we have some questions, Rachna?
Yes, sir. We have a few questions, one or two. So,
Please
ma'am,
go ahead.
in influencing clinical and business decisions, how is medical affairs changing from a supporting role to a genuine strategic partner role?
A very good question. And I think this is where I said about the mindset. I think a lot of the mindset amongst our cross-functional colleagues is still that we are a supporting function. So we need to be able to partner. And I think this goes back to what I was saying about the insights and the stakeholders that we kind of work with. For us, it's really important because we are the bridge between R&D and marketing. So we know the entire journey for the product. So we can't undo that. No, we can't unsee that. So we need to be able to have those discussions. But it's also important to bear in mind, we are in a commercial environment. So we need to have the business acumen skills. It doesn't come naturally to a medic. Believe me, I have been on my own journey to develop those. So give yourself time to be able to understand the business acumen, learn from people, from mentors who are in marketing and market access who will help you learn it. But I think it's almost a combination of all of it. You have to make sure that you remember you're the bridge, you remember you're the scientific expert, and what is the value that our marketing team or our company wants to get from this brand, which will also help the unmet need for the patients. So for us, the objective is always different. But the way I say to my team is, we're all having different functions, right? I'm wearing a medical hat, somebody's wearing a marketing hat. We are all coming from different places, but our objective is the same: getting the right treatment to the right patient. So even if we come from different roads, if we are meeting in the same junction, it's fine. I can be A and you can be B. It's how we respect each other. So just have that approach to collaborative working, understand what are the needs of our functions, our internal stakeholders and external stakeholders. But again, it's a skill that we have to develop as medics, as scientists, as a pharmacist, to be able to convert our skills into a language which is much more commercial. but you will get it over time. It's a very conscious effort though. So don't feel that if I'm not getting it, I won't get it. You just have to find the right people to support you. And that really helps. I had multiple mentors throughout my life. It hasn't come easy to me. So
Yes, ma'am. And we have a question from Akanksha Verma. Thanks for an insightful session, Dr. Mayura. Could you please share an example where early collaboration between medical affairs and market access leads stronger HTA or NICE outcomes?
beautiful question. So actually, this goes back to when I first joined the industry, which is a long time ago now. And we were launching a drug, which for a psoriatic indication. And my market access colleague said to me, that was the first launch in the company for a long time. So we really needed to understand how we needed to work, what we needed to involve in our modeling, what should be our kind of competitors in terms of which competitors to put in our modeling and things like that. So what we decided as a function is a really strong plan. Um, Internal plan to like what will be my responsibility as a medic, what will be the market access responsibility, and how we're going to collaborate. My thing was I needed to get the insights from the healthcare professional, the experts. So I did an advisory board. We got some expert insights, and it was really insightful because one of the advice we got from an experts is exactly what we use during our NICE submission. And I have to say, it normally doesn't happen. And anybody who's worked in the UK market will know NICE is really tough because cost effectiveness doesn't come easy. I think, as Dr. Mukherjee said, they haven't changed the threshold for years. Um, it was really difficult, but that because we had used the experts' insights into our submission, we actually managed to get formularies, our drug onto the formularies even before we had NICE. I don't know how that happens. It doesn't happen very often, but we did manage to get a drug on 2 formularies in the north, even before we had the NICE submission update come through. So it does help, but I think again it goes back to making sure that you work very closely with your cross-functional team to understand what's their objectives and how as a medical team you can bring the value. But yes, you have to be constant communication.
Yes, ma'am. And we have a question from Sakshi. What are the
Mhm.
skill sets required by a pharmacist who wants to be a part of medical affairs?
Very nice question again. So again, I think it goes back to what I've been saying. You have to first trust that you are a scientific expert, but you're not a police officer. And again, it goes back to this change in mindset. When you enter the industry, you will always be looked upon like, okay, you are going to tell me what is right and what is wrong. And you have to get away from that from day one, saying, no, it's not my role to police you. I am here to do a completely different job. So I think owning that you're the expert, but you're not somebody's parent in your workplace. We are all professionals here. But also all keeping that, as I said, the one advice I received when I joined the industry, you're a medic by heart. Don't forget that ever. So if you remember that my pharmacy background is always for making sure the patients are at the forefront, you keep that in your mind when you go into whichever industry, could be pharmaceutical or wherever, and you have to keep that in mind. But the skills you need to develop is this understanding of business acumen. You cannot get away without developing that, and that doesn't come easy to us medics, us scientists and pharmacists. But you have to have a really strong mentor to be able to help you get that. And if you get that business acumen, think about it, having that patient centricity, understanding of the business acumen, you are the best placed person in the entire industry to be able to give the right advice. So don't forget that you are a pharmacist. Your main function is to make sure the patients are cared for. But if you're joining a pharmaceutical industry, it's a commercial industry. What's the objective of my company? And how can I, as a pharmacist, bring value to them? But as I said, it's a journey. Find the right mentor for you, understand what they have done understand their experience, and I think you will get there. But don't do it yourself. Get a mentor. It becomes much easier when you speak to someone. And as I said, I do mentoring a lot in the UK. So if anybody wants to maybe have a chat with me, more than happy. You can get my email from Richa.
Thank you, ma'am. And Aditya is asking, HEOR or medical affairs, which is more relevant for family students?
For which students, sorry? Pharmacy students.
Yeah,
PharmD, ma'am.
PharmD. They're asking HEOR or medical affairs, Dr. Mayura, which is more relevant.
Ooh, I don't want to fight with my colleagues here. We are in a collaborative function. To be honest, like I always believe that you need to define your own skills and then go into that. If you feel that you feel I will be really well placed in kind of doing this whole modeling and like understanding of the competitor landscape to be able to put in a really good clinical overview in your HTA submission, then do that. Because as a PharmD student, I'm pretty sure you actually are able to do everything because again, your science background helps you. So yeah, but there's no right or wrong answer. It really depends on you. I will always say medical affairs, but then that won't be the right thing.
I mean, to each his own, Dr. Mayura, as you rightly said,
Exactly.
depends on
Exactly.
where you want to go in your career. If the R, Python, Excel models interest you, then
Yes.
cost-effective analysis, if you understand the terminologies like ICER and everything, I mean, it's up to you. The horizon is
Yeah.
open wherever you want to
Yeah.
go.
And even if you don't understand it, believe me, you will understand it at some point because it's
Exactly.
life is about learning.
Yes.
I didn't understand what ICER was when I joined my company, and within 3 weeks I was told, okay, you have to give me your you have to comment on the clinical overview of a nice submission. And I was like, no idea what a nice submission is, although I was working in the NHS, never got involved with an HTA submission. So you learn things. It's not that you have to know a lot before you join the industry. But I'm hoping this conference is going to help you to at least get the basic skills ready when you do apply for that first job.
So in our morning session also, Dr. Mayura, we were talking about learning agility. So when we discussed about various career options and how can we progress in our respective careers, I think it's skill and will. Skill is something you develop on the way, but that willingness to learn comes from within, and you have to keep that
Yes,
spirit alive. So you can learn.
exactly. Totally agree.
Thanks. So, Rachna, in the interest of time,
Yes.
maybe we can thank Dr. Mayura. And Dr. Mayura, there are more questions. Maybe I'll get back to you on them and
Yeah, no problem.
feel free to answer. Okay. Thank you
Perfect.
so much,
Thank
Dr.
you.
Mayura. Thank
Have a
you.
lovely day.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you so much, Dr. Mayura Deshpande, for the truly inspiring and insightful session. You have beautifully highlighted how collaboration and strategic partnerships shape the evolving landscape of medical affairs. Now we move on to our next topic for the day, Trust by Design, Explainable, Governed Privacy, and First AI. We are joined by Dr. Pranab Pillai, the founder and CEO of Nutra Trial, based in Singapore. With over 2 decades of experience in clinical research, biopharma operations, and digital innovation, Dr. Pillai has led large-scale global programs that bridge technology, data, and healthcare. Before founding NutraTrial, he spent more than 15 years at Covance. Now where he served as a head of APAC Biopharma Project Management, overseeing strategic planning and regional leadership across multiple therapeutic areas. His journey also includes impactful roles at Amgen, PharmaNet, and MCure Pharmaceuticals, where he honed his expertise in project leadership, operational excellence, and data-driven decision-making. Through his work, Dr. Pillai has been at the forefront of integrating ethical AI and explainable governance into clinical research, ensuring innovation remains transparent, secure, and centered on patients' trust. So before we begin, I inform everybody once again that we have a Q&A session after the speaker's note. So please join me in welcoming Dr. Pranab Pillai for his talk on Trust by Design, Explainable, Governed Privacy First AI. It's over to you.
Thanks, Rachna. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, sir.
Hi, Pranab. Yes, we can hear
Perfect.
you.
I'll go ahead and share my screen, right? Is that okay?
Sure. Sure.
Okay,
Yes,
just
sir.
give me a second. Right. Let me know if you can see my screen.
It's still not there, Pranab.
Not there yet? Hold
Yeah.
on. Okay, I think it's coming up now.
Yes, we can see it. Please go ahead. All yours.
Okay, perfect. Yeah. So thanks, everyone, and good morning, good afternoon from wherever you are. As mentioned, I'm CEO and founder of a company called NeuroTrial AI. My background, I'm a domain expert. I've worked within clinical research for 20 years now. I've lived most of that 20 years within clinical research in Singapore. I've worked with companies like Covance, LabCorp, before that with Amgen, PharmaNet, and kind of the idea of building AI came because AI worked really, really fast. And I thought, okay, why don't we build something that helps researchers and also essentially enterprises. So what I wanted to do is do something different. I think most of the time we do talk about what AI can do for us, right? I wanted to take a slightly different approach and say, can we really trust it? Meaning, are you able to explain what AI does? Then are there governance tools? Are there audits? Is it auditable? Is the data, the information that we exchange with some of these tools private? May that be as an individual or as organizations, right? So essentially, what happens is why these things are important, and you will see in the slides later, is because we work in a highly regulated industry. May that be healthcare, clinical research, life sciences, or even finance. You can have a very clever assistant, but remember that sometimes the models we design are used to decide on eligibility in a clinical trial, for example, or whether funding needs to be provided in a research setting. And even from a regulatory inspection perspective. So the bar is much higher than maybe asking ChatGPT to write a poem for you, right? So that's very different. And in this presentation, I'm going to touch upon three broad topics. They're interrelated, but very different. Are the models that we use really explainable? And I'll get to what that is. Is it governed? Do we have proper auditing that happens for these tools? And is it really, really private? So those are the areas that I will run into. Now, if you have any questions, please do send in the chat. I won't be able to see the chat because I'm sharing my screen, but I will take those questions in the end. So what generally happens today, right? So you have any models. Now, it may not just be a conversational AI or a chatbot. What it generally happens is the models are trained. There is some kind of ML process that is happening. And the machine learns to do certain things. As a user, you use it for anything, right? It could be a chatbot, it could be any other AI tool that you're using. But when you get an output, either a response or an output or a report, do you know why the AI actually did it? Why did it choose option A versus option B? When do we know whether it's really succeeded? When do we know whether it really failed? Can we identify the failure? Then whether can we really trust it? Meaning whatever it's saying, can we really trust it? And if it has made a mistake, does it tell you that it has? And you have an option as a user to correct the errors. Now that's where most of the AI is today. Now, what explainable AI expects is, or the short form is XAI, as you can see on the screen, is you as a user need to understand why did the model do something the way it did. You need to understand why it did not do some of the other things. You also need to know when it has succeeded or when it has failed, and that increases your trust level. And when it has made a mistake, you can actually take corrective action. So that is the whole idea in terms of understanding AI. And sometimes it is easy to miss some of these things when we ourselves as end users use some of these models or tools, but these are critical, and I'll come to in the later slides as to why some of these are important. Now, when is explainability really not that important, right? So one of the things where I mentioned was writing a poem. If you ask ChatGPT to write a poem for you, you don't really want to know how it actually came up with that poem, right? Or if it recommends lists for you on your Netflix or on Spotify, you may really not want to know how it kind of came to that conclusion, right? Because that is not a high stakes task for you. You will see some random ads from Amazon these days, which are AI driven. It kind of uses AI in the backend to suggest or make recommendations for you. Your emails get filtered from your main inbox to maybe promotions, for example. AI somehow, or AI or machine learning is involved within some of those. Now, these are use cases where you don't really have serious or probability or possibility of serious harm. But there are other instances where it can cause harm. So for example, if you're using an AI to recommend a treatment for a cancer patient, and there are many different options. Now, why did the model actually choose the option that it did provide to the clinician or to the researcher versus the other option available? Why did an algorithm, an AI algorithm, say that this patient was or was not eligible to participate in a clinical trial. Or in a finance, for example, why was a loan rejected based on an AI tool? Or why did a self-driving car actually just suddenly brake in the middle of the traffic? Was there a reason why it did that, right? So these are cases where their lives are impacted, right? Directly, indirectly. So we need to have systems and tools which are governed and which have some level of explainability. And there are many layers of those, which I will come to in a bit. Now, in case of medical, healthcare, life sciences, this becomes a very critical thing. Now, think about a very simple use case, right? You open ChatGPT or you open Perplexity or you turn on Claude or Gemini or whatever. You go in and ask a question. It is essentially a black box, right? So you ask something, it generates a response for you. You generally did not know what happened in the background, meaning how did it really come to that response? You may have put in a few numbers in there and said, can you assess this for me and calculate this for me? And then it throws out something. It doesn't really, you can't really see what it is. So it's essentially a black box, and any black box environment can have issues in terms of trust, safety, legality, and some ethical problems. So explainability these days is not just a nice to have. You need to have that in your design. So you can't just simply try and explain to it later, but your design itself, as these AI models, they need to have it even in the planning stage. And explainability is not something that is the same for everyone. For example, an individual who's a developer will need a very different level of explainability compared to a clinician, for example, or a regulator. So they need different levels of explanations, and we need to tailor the explainability to these. And some of these core elements that are defined in terms of what the explainability looks like is who are you actually addressing the response to with the explainability? How do you link that to your decision? What type of explanation is required, depending on the role or the profile of the user? Sometimes it's difficult to explain, right? Meaning you will have an accurate system. For example, if you are writing a research paper and you have referenced maybe over 100 articles, and you've pulled those 100 articles and you write a really, really nice research paper, and you ask an AI model, which is really good and been trained really well, it may probably access 50,000 papers, right? And then it tries to connect across these papers. So explainability is not easy, right? In some of these cases where some very large models are looking at millions of data sets, are trying to find out some type of correlation across these data points. But how do you balance that accuracy versus explainability? How do you prevent an automation bias? So people who keep using AI, they tend to kind of generally trust it, right? Meaning it's just that I use it every day. I have not been said that something I did was wrong. So there is a bias in my mind that, yes, whatever I'm getting is actually correct. So you have an automation bias. There are individual values, and how does it impact on patient-doctor autonomy? How do patients deal with it? How do doctors deal with it? So there are a lot of areas that we essentially need to consider when we are dealing with explainable AI. Now, going into this in a bit more detail, when you're explaining something, it has to be human understandable, right? So you can't throw up a bunch of formulas and explain, or a graph and say, hey, this is all it works. A simple graph, good enough, but a three-dimensional or a multi-dimensional graph where you start connecting these vectors and all those stuff and say how it's all connected, it's not something what explainability means. And you need to give that explanation to the individual according to their role, according to their relevance. You should be able to explain its competence. You should be able to explain its past actions, what the next steps and the current processes are, and how do you kind of put all those evidences and the inputs together. And all of these are essentially, most of these days are tailored towards professionals, right? It is not toward end users like us, where we kind of take up a model and we get to know how exactly a certain thing happened. So you need to have tools that are sufficiently transparent and interpretable, and they have to be rule-based, right? So wherein you have systems that are able to explain. Now, in some cases, as I said, it may not be needed, but essentially the idea is you need to have transparency in how something has happened, how to interpret that something that has happened, and how do you explain those decisions. So those are important from a legal perspective, from ethics perspective, and from a basic human understanding perspective. Now, in terms of AI governance, now what generally happens, as I said, it's not an afterthought. It has to be in your design. So when you govern your AI, you need to ensure that you have proper governance in place. So your leadership from the CEO all the way down, you need to ensure that there are proper governance mechanisms of these models. How do you prevent bias of these models, all your tools? Like, for example, you throw out a model which is really, really good at maybe doing some drug discovery. Now, how do you ensure that someone does not end up making a biological weapon with it, right? So guardrailing, so governance and all. So those are some of the considerations which organizations need to take care of when they are building these tools. Building these tools these days, I'm telling you, it's not that difficult. What is difficult is to keep it in control, right? Meaning, how do you explain and ensure that people use it properly? You can give a knife to a baby and then they can hurt themselves, right? Or they can hurt others. But how do you ensure that you just give that knife to the right person, or the knife is intelligent enough to not hurt anyone around them? So that's the whole idea of governance. And how do you as an organization create these frameworks and ensure that you have the appropriate monitoring and auditing of your tools? Now, then the other element is the privacy. So we've covered explainability, we've covered governance and privacy. Now, in terms of privacy, what does actually mean? See, I think this was the first thing. Privacy was the first thing that actually changed the whole conversation about AI, where you've seen the very early versions of ChatGPT, where some companies' data were thrown off to other users as potential examples, right? So where data was used by these tools for training the models, and they ended up showing on other users' responses. This has changed significantly with most of the advanced models these days. But how do you ensure that the data is private? 3 or 4 months ago, or even 6 months ago, it was very easy to go to have a tool that would go to an internet site and scrape the data. So scrape meaning just go and collect the data from it and put it into their training models to be used later, or real-time scraping. But when you do that, are you allowed to actually go to that site? Meaning you can go to a regulatory site. Regulators allow you to take the data because it is out for the public and it is not associated with certain limits. But are you really allowed, right? So one of the examples that came up recently was we were trying to talk to one of a biotech companies, and they wanted to develop some kind of tool for biomarkers using AI. Now, there are a lot of biomarker databases available out there, but we couldn't technically kind of use it and train the model because they are very clear that these models have to be used for individuals and not for organizations. So how do you check what your data is? How do you ensure that your data is not copyright protected and you are not just picking up data, right? That is from a data perspective. Same from a user perspective. What are you doing with the user data? Where does it sit? You say that it sits in a log for, say, a certain number of days, but what does it actually mean? Do the users really know that their data is being kept? Do you have an access to go and request deletion of the data? In some instances, legally, they may want to keep the data because someone might have misused a model, right, by generating content that was not allowed. Like, as I said, in this case, they may ask for maybe a weapon generation, right, which we don't really want. Or maybe someone has asked something to harm themselves or maybe the others. So in instances like that, there has to be data stored, but is it something that is explained to the user upfront? So these are some of the things in terms of data privacy that are important for everyone to consider. Now, there are many organizations or regulators who have come with AI regulations. FDA has it, EU has it. So I'm going to take EU as just a benchmark and explain to you what regulators think about these 3 concepts of explainability, governance, and privacy. So what regulators say is that AI should be understandable, right? So any high-risk AI. So high-risk AI is anything that we do within our domain, right? From a healthcare life sciences perspective, it is categorized as a high-risk domain. So all these models are or should be understandable to the user. It needs to have a clear instruction on the purpose. What are the limits of those models? What kind of data it is? And then how do you interpret the outputs, right? And within all of these for high-risk AI that are used within our domain, we need to have appropriate human oversight, and it's mandatory as per this regulation. So you can't just build a model and then use it within your domain and say that there was no human oversight. right? Because once you get audited and inspected, these are some of the checklist items that the regulators are going to come and ask you. Not you, probably your user of your tools, as to how did you actually come to a conclusion the way you did, right? And then how do you ensure that these models prevent any risk to health or safety or basic fundamental rights of individuals? For example, if there is a bias in a clinical trial patient matching system, it would be harmful for the patients who are actually not selected to be participating in a clinical trial. Now, how do we ensure that these systems, even if they're running, there are issues, you can stop it? So then comes the idea of qualified transparency, meaning who sees what in terms of explainability. So that is also something that the EU AI Act clearly mentions. Now, the same thing in terms of privacy. High-risk AI should be high quality, it should be relevant and representative. So when you have a training data or you use data to train your models, did you use representative data? Because most of the time, what people have been doing in the past is they just use the data that is available. No one actually went to the extent of saying, is this data representable, and will our model be generally representable to the population that we are serving, right? So the training, validation, and test data sets. So people have been just using what is available, saying that, okay, there is nothing else available. But how do you then ensure that your model meets all of these regulations is what the regulators are now asking us to do. And they all sit on top of the existing GDPR style principles. And now they are also asking that we keep logs for at least 6 months to ensure that we track any misuse or rights violation of or by these AI tools. The same thing in terms of the governance, meaning we need to have, so from a governance perspective, the EU Act classifies certain uses as banned. So a very simple thing that they use is like you cannot use an AI tool to decide whether you should select a candidate or not select a candidate from a jobs perspective, right? Meaning someone has applied for a job and you have these AI tools. Unless there is clear explainability in terms of how those models work, you can't just have a black box wherein you put in a bunch of CVs and the output is these are the 5 top people that you should consider, because you really don't know how those evaluations happened. So if you're building something like that, you need to have something clearly explainable. But EU has, you can kind of read the regulations, but there are some use cases where the EU has banned the use of AI. The high-risk categories are healthcare, biometrics, employment, critical services. These are considered high risk, so you need to follow the requirements of high risk. And then there are limited risk, transparency, and minimal risk categories where you have a bit of kind of flexibility to use the model the way you want to. So you need to have a good auditing, quality management, risk management system. All of us are quite familiar with this within our industry, but from an AI perspective, regulators want us to do that as well. Now, what they essentially want, if I have to put it very simply, is whatever tool that we provide as organizations to the users, to enterprises, it should be explainable to the user. It should be private by design, and it has to have governance and auditability across the life cycle of from the very beginning, where you actually select your training data set, until the moment you get an output. Everything in between needs to have governance, explainability, and privacy built into it. Now, when we as organizations build things, we have to take all of that into consideration. So we can't just simply build something and just send it out there without knowing that there is no privacy, there is no governance, there is no accountability, our models are not fair, or there is security lapses in terms of how the data is being used or the data that is being used to train the models. So this becomes kind of an additional duty of care for enterprises and organizations when we build and take these tools to our customers. Now, what do we generally need to do in terms of these AI models, right? Meaning, what do companies do from explainability, governance, and privacy perspective? So as I said, we need to be very clear that our models are, like, we acquire our training data appropriately. There are evaluations that are performed regularly. There are organizations who will build a model, but they will never evaluate it. Meaning, does it do the right thing? Does it not do the right thing? They just build it and kind of, because they're all in a hurry to catch up, right? This whole race, they just build and then kind of, I don't think a lot of them put their thought process into evaluations at all. They have, so at the very beginning itself, we need to have all these things in place. How are you going to use the data? How are you going to protect it? How do you ensure that there is transparency across the life cycle? Is there a feedback loop? So when you get a feedback from a user, do you actually take that feedback and make any changes, right? So that's explainability. The same thing with governance. You need to have that whole governance built into your development process. And also after that, to ensure that this whole thing is being managed properly. And the same with the copyrighted content, user data in terms of privacy. So these are all some of the stuff that organizations do these days. Now, what happens to us, right? So this is the last slide I think I have. So what is our part, right? So we as researchers or individuals who consume this AI or use it to do a number of things with the AI, sometimes knowingly, sometimes unknowingly, we are generating something which sometimes we can't explain. So the question really isn't, can we build it, right, for organizations? It is about, can we actually defend it? What has been happening at every level. When I say defense, it's not just the output, it's at every level. Is it defensible? And when we as consumers use it, do we really understand if the AI we use is really private? Can it explain to me how it kind of has done certain things? And is it governed? Meaning, is there some level of governance that is built to these tools in the background? So this was a very heavy topic. I kind of tried to kind of put it into one 45-minute presentation, but I'm sure there is a lot that could be kind of spoken on presentation like this. But yeah, that was all that I had. And I want to kind of, well, let me stop sharing here. Go back to this slide so you can see folks. Yes, so these are like kind of a high level stuff. So feel free to jump in, ask any questions, and whatever you feel like. If you have any comment for the larger audience as well, please feel free to just add it in.
Thanks, Pranab, for the wonderful and engaging session. Hi, everyone. Please feel free to ask your questions, your doubts related to AI, anything about Pranab's journey, anything you want to know. Please go ahead and ask.
Thanks, Richa.
Maybe I can ask Pranab. So what inspired you to be an entrepreneur now?
Yeah, it was it was interesting when so I've always been a domain guy. I love technology. The other day someone was asking me, why did you start loving technology? I don't know why, but then every time something IT mishap used to happen, the IT guys used to send people my way because I somehow used to figure out as to how to figure out things. I used to kind of do a lot of experimentation. In fact, once when I was in my first company in HEOR, I blew up a laptop, a desktop at that time, by pressing some buttons which shouldn't have been, and then it crashed. And the guy came and told me, "What did you do?" I said, "I was trying to figure out what happens if I do this." Right? I did not really know. I think internet at that time did not give you all of that information as AI does these days. But then, when I did that, because of for the personal reasons, I was in a break. So before my son joined his primary, I wanted to spend some time in UK for 1 year. I was there in Oxford. AI was picking up and I was very, very interested. So I hired a bunch of IT teams and asked them to build something for me. And there was just an initial journey. I thought, if it doesn't work out, I don't have to be in there. But things turned out to be very, very interesting. Over that period of time, I started coding and understanding, trying to bridge the gap within the tech. And that's what inspired me to kind of say, hey, let's just start something which we can take to companies now, right? Not just to individual users, but to companies. So that's where it all kind of started. I'm kind of loving it.
Great. Wonderful. I mean, it reflects in the way you speak and everything, Pranav. It reflects that you are enjoying, in your body language, that you are enjoying this journey.
Thanks.
So great. We have questions coming up. Rachna, would you like to read them out to Pranav, please?
Yes, ma'am. Sakshi is asking, sir, do you think AI can help find adverse drug reactions in patient and dose calculations?
I would say it hasn't. So yeah, this question, Sakshi, has been asked, and I think there are a few organizations really working on it. So I'll give you one typical use case for adverse drug reactions and a dose calculation. So one of the things that I was exploring, digital twins. I'm not sure how many of you are familiar with digital twins. So we were trying to see
about them today, Pranab. Sorry to interrupt. I took them in my session. So
you did? Okay.
Yes.
Perfect.
Please go ahead.
Yeah, so essentially, digital twins can be used to even get personalized levels of adverse drug reactions, ADR, AEs, SAEs, or whatever it is, right? You could potentially build a tool to get personalized level, but that's very expensive, compute heavy, because you need to build tools specifically for those patients, and you need to have very thorough data set. But even without that, you can find broad population-based ADRs if you are looking at ADRs across the data set. But again, as I said, the data has to be foolproof. If you have some data, like in the previous instances when people did not have data, they used to use synthetic data to plug the gaps. But that did not give you very high accuracy. So when you do your evaluations, you need to be absolutely sure what those, how did you actually come to those conclusions? But essentially, yes, you can build AI models to potentially look at adverse drug reactions. So the way the models would typically work is it would probably take in all your omics data, right? It'll probably take all of your medical data. It'll try and do correlation and say, hey, these set of patients can typically have a drug reaction to a drug with a MOA or a mechanism of action like this. So you are able to build models, but you need to be sure as to you factor in all of these things for you to get an accurate reaction. And the same thing in terms of patient dose calculation, right? So most of the time, dose calculation happens in general around the body weight. So most people have been doing that for a very long time, but you can have more personalized level of dose calculation by building more complicated and stronger algorithms that AI can look through millions of data points to actually accurately predict based on their liver condition, or if they have renal disease, or if they have a certain genetic makeup, right? If all of the data is in there, it should be able to predict some things. Again, this is all human in the loop. It gets you started. Because we're dealing with humans, you always need to ensure that it has gone through that human phase wherein a test has been done within the human phase, because just using a model will not be sufficient. Maybe in the future, we'll get to a state where every one of us will have a digital twin, and medicine will be tested on all of us before it's actually given to us, because then it'll say, hey, Pranab's going to have an adverse drug reaction for this particular medication, so maybe give him something else, right? And the same thing, maybe this dose doesn't fit Pranab. Maybe you need to give him a different dose. So yes, I think eventually we'll get there. For now, still in a very nascent stage because of the need to collect personalized data to make any such credible decisions.
Yes, sir. And we have a few more questions. Sabah Begum is asking, sir, how do we ensure that AI becomes more advanced? Clinicians still understand and trust its recommendations rather than just follow them blindly. If you could just elaborate on
Yeah, this is a good question, Sabah. So in terms of AI becoming advanced, right? So there are a few things how AI can become advanced. The first one, obviously, is the data that we use to put inside these AI models to make the correlations. The other one is the architecture of some of these models. Does it actually go in and understand the thing that is put in there? Now, one thing I can explain to you about AI, so far, there are, I think we're talking about AGI, but AI is, so if I have to explain to you how AI generally works, right? So I have, say, my medical records and I scan it into an AI system. The AI, what it does is it converts my scan into a text. The text is then sent through a process where it converted into numbers. So every text, so if, say, I have, say, atorvastatin, for example, it will convert atorvastatin into numbers. It splits atorvastatin into certain stuff, and then it converts it into number. And this number sits in a database somewhere within the model itself. Now, based on the input, atorvastatin can be picked up if there is a high probability, meaning these are all probabilistic models where it tries to make probabilities and say, hey, this is the highest probability for me to go in this sequence, right? So it goes in a sequence and then it gives you a response. So that is how it works. Now, there are reasoning models that have come in where the sequence is then tested by kind of testing its own thinking process. Right? Say, okay, I've said this, but is it really right? Right. So models have now become a little bit more advanced than what it used to be. So systems are much more reliable these days, but a lot could be done from a clinical standpoint. And in terms of the development itself, right? So there's a lot happening. Model architectures have changed significantly. So yes, AIs are slowly getting there, but the accountability still becomes important. So the question that someone kind of the other day, we were having a meeting and someone asked, if I use AI and if I make a recommendation and if the patient falls sick, is the AI responsible? Is the company making AI responsible, or is the doctor responsible, right? So whose responsibility is it like where it is, right? So this is a very complicated question because any AI developer will say it's your responsibility, doctor, because you should have checked it, right? Because I've told you that this doesn't have 100% accuracy. But the doctor said, you came to me and I said that this is a very robust model and it predicts something. So there are tensions around some of these things as to how these things work. But eventually, as we go along, the technology is becoming so good. There are some models which have recently gotten 100% on the USMLE exams, right? Meaning better than what students would generally get. So humans do make mistakes. AI, they say, will make less mistakes. But yes, it's kind of getting there in terms of the system recommendations or accountability. But then, yeah, with the governance coming in, regulators also jumping in to make people accountable for people who are building it and people who are using it, both at the same time. Yep. I hope that answers your question. Otherwise, please do send a follow-up. And then the other interesting aspect, right? I don't know whether you've recently, so there's a paper that kind of came up recently, maybe around 3 or 4 weeks ago. So what it did was it did a trial on doctors who were using AI. So it evaluated or scored them on their diagnostic ability at a baseline, gave them AI for 3 months, and then evaluated their diagnostic ability after 3 months. And I think it increased their diagnostic ability by 20%. They were able to improve their ability to diagnose diseases. Then they took away AI and then evaluated them again after 3 or 4 months. And their ability to diagnose actually went down from the very first baseline that they had, because they were so reliant. So that is the automation bias I talked about. They were so reliant on AI that now they couldn't think without AI as a tool to make some of those decisions. So there are kind of pros and cons with some of these models as to how they've been used. But as humans, I think we kind of need to figure out how we will use them eventually. Are there any other that we have, Rachana?
Yes, sir. Can I read it for you, sir?
Yeah, sure.
Sir, from your perspective, what truly builds trust among clinicians and patients when it comes to AI-driven decision support? Is it transparency, performance, or governance, more importantly and precisely?
So I would say it's all, right? Probably more than what you have mentioned. So there is definitely need of governance. As I said, so when we build some of our tools, we try to kind of give the users every step of the backend process, meaning the user pressed this button, it triggered this action. We have multiple agents, and this agent was picked up because of this reason. The agent then picked up this document, provided a response, and then kind of did. So that's the governance that we're talking about. In terms of transparency, do they actually see that process? Yes, and that's where the reasoning models have come in, where the transparency have become slightly better. So if you go and click on that reasoning, you'll see the steps that the model has actually taken, right? So, and also, why did it not choose a certain decision? So when you read some of the transcripts that it has in the reasoning, you can see why did it choose one decision over the other. So I would essentially say all of these are critical and much more. So there are many other factors as well that needs to be considered here for anyone to kind of essentially use the system. Now, what happens is clinicians leave the burden of all of this to the developers, and clinicians want to know whether it is correct or can I use this model? But there are some who actually go in and question some of these things before they use these models. So I hope that makes sense.
Yes, sir. And we have a question from Akanksha. How AI-supported medical technologies are seen by regulatory authorities?
Yeah, so surprisingly, Akanksha, regulators are seeing it in a much more positive light than what industry itself is seeing. We had gone at a meeting recently, and then there were a bunch of folks, they said AI is still not there. But if you open up some of the articles, you will see that, say, UK's MHRA has already started using AI in drug approvals. They have cut down approval time by 50%, that's what they say. FDA has released guidance documents for use of AI at all levels, from discovery to drug development. They have had these AI regulations come out. So regulators are very much on top of it. Regulators have accepted it. They know that this is the direction that it is going to go, right? And then regulators are more receptive than companies. I think the reason most of the companies don't adopt AI is because for everyone, it's a black box. They don't really understand where to start, right? Meaning a lot of them have heard about it, read about it. There are large companies who have spent millions, like I think Novo Nordisk or Lilly or Johnson & Johnson. Everyone's kind of putting in money in there, right? Meaning, so there are companies using it. So everyone's getting everyone excited as to there are these things happening. So there is a lot of FOMO out there. That's why they want to use AI. But regulators are kind of at their level, they've started implementing and using AI at different levels, but they're cautious in the way they do it. They're giving out guidances and all that stuff. But I personally feel their adoption is slightly more than the industry itself.
Yes, sir. And we have a few more questions. Mirza is asking which areas of pharmaceutical industry are more likely to be affected by AI automation, research, clinical trials, or data analysis?
So data was the first thing that started because see, even before AI, machine learning was already doing a lot of stuff for data analysis. With the AI coming in, with the new AI models coming in, those ML tasks have become very easy, interpretable, and it was able to do much more, right? In terms of data itself. So these really heavy models these days have so much data and data points in there that data analysis becomes very easy for them. So data analysis was the first that already started. Clinical trials is already started at all the phases itself, right? So from protocol writing, there are tools available out there that can help you write protocols. There are tools available out there that can pressure test your protocols. There are tools available out there that can give you various versions of what your sample size calculation should be in a protocol. It will tell you the eligibility. It will go and score through millions of data points and kind of suggest, hey, this is what it is. Clinical trials, also patient matching. So you can match patients on clinical trials, right? So there are models that are available that run within hospital systems where you pull in data from the EMR, you look at the patient profile and match it against the inclusion exclusion of the sponsor and say, hey, this site has 5 ovarian cancer trial patients who actually meet protocol ABC criteria. So AI has actually gone into all of this already from a clinical trial perspective. The same with research. Pharma is spending billions of dollars in drug discovery. And most of the large pharmaceutical companies have had now, I think, signed partnerships with most large AI providers in drug discovery. So a lot of this has already started within drug discovery, clinical trials, or data analysis, and much more.
Yes, sir. And Anjali has a question. As students, how can we understand the safe limits of using AI in medicine so that it supports but doesn't replace human expertise?
Yeah, this is kind of critical, right? So I give an example of how someone used AI and then ended up just relying completely on AI. So it's like this, right? A few years ago, many years ago, people used to say you need to remember tables, right? Nowadays, I think students, like with calculators, no one kind of thinks about tables anymore, right? The same thing with typing and dictating. See, I have given up typing for a very long time. I just simply dictate, right? So eventually it is going to be voice enabled. So industry is changing. All of us are changing. So what will happen is this tool is always going to be there. There are some people who will use it and excel at it. There are some people who may just say, hey, this is going to kind of make my brain smaller, right? And then I won't be able to think. I think as individuals, we need to go in and evaluate ourselves as to how do we use it. We can still do a lot of things while using these tools, but you need to be careful as to how to use it. The first thing is before you use any AI tool in medicine, life sciences, healthcare, it is important for you to really research a bit more as to the background about these tools, how reliable they are. You can't generally easily get an answer. So whenever you can't get an answer, you always are on the side of caution where you try to be careful, really evaluate. So earlier when I used to use AI tools, simple chatbots, I would always go in and kind of copy and paste that in Google and try to get a relevant a research paper to kind of see whether it is true or not. And in those days, they always used to be wrong, right? They used to hallucinate, they used to make up things. So as students, you have to kind of be very careful. Don't just blindly trust what AI has given you. It will get to a stage where you will see that the trust will improve. But at this point in time, I would say you still have to evaluate everything that comes out of it and ensure that you're cross-checking it before you use it. And then what will happen is one side of your brain will probably become kind of less active compared to the others. Maybe you'll start developing something new. Maybe see, it's like using AI itself as a skill. Maybe one part of the brain will open up probably to use AI better, right? So I think that's where it will all go.
Yes, sir. And we have one last question. To what extent can I use AI to be ethically and effectively used in the process of writing and publishing literature?
Yeah, so interesting one, right? So there are tools available. So even before tools, I can tell you, right? So when I was writing my thesis, uh, a couple of my friends said, there are these people who you just outsource your thesis work to. They will do all the research for you. They probably like AI at that time, but humans who would go and research for you, they will charge you a fee and they will write a thesis for you, right? I was like, how is that even possible, right? Meaning the whole idea is for you to understand what you're writing. The same thing comes with AI. See, it's a tool. It is same like internet, right? A few years ago, people would have said there was no internet. I used to go and read all of my books in the library and read through it and then write my thesis. Nowadays, people say, I've done it on Google. Google has a lot of research papers. I've gone into it. Now, I think the next breed of researchers are going to say, I've used AI to use the tool. I don't think there's anything wrong with it. For you to ethically use it is important, right? So I think like when people were using Google at that time, there were these plagiarism tools. Like you could yourself as a researcher send your papers through that tool, and it'll kind of list down similarity, right? Meaning this particular paragraph or this line is similar to a similar paper somewhere else. So you could kind of test it out. Maybe you've thought about the same thing and you've written it down. AI will also come up with some of these tools where you can kind of compare against these tools. But I think it's about ethically using it for literature review. I don't think there is any harm because AI will synthesize information much more than what you yourself can synthesize. See, it's all about the objective. When you write a research paper, do a literature review, you want to get to a certain outcome. Is that more important, or is that you leave a bunch of articles and then you write something and say, I've not used AI. So what is more important? The output is critical, right? Is the output right or wrong? So I look at it more from an output perspective. You use it ethically. I don't think there's an issue in using tools like this, and there are more tools coming out, right? So what they're doing is simply looking at those articles and giving you a summary. And you could then go ahead, you still have to read the article, right? You can't just, I think that will be unethical for you to just simply copy and paste what AI has given you. You still have to go and read the article, the one that you feel is important, because when we were writing our papers, we kind of scored through maybe a few thousand and then read some abstracts for a few thousand, and then maybe 50 or 60 will go and read the full text article, right? So that's what you need to do every with AI tools too.
Yes, and we have one last question. Can the inclusion of AI in the clinical trials lead to potential bias of the generation of results, and how can XAI address this potential bias?
Yes. So there is definitely a chance of bias if the models are not built properly, right? So the bias can happen at any level. That could be inclusion of the patients, meaning where the patients are coming from. It could be heavily biased towards a certain region, for example, where the models were really trained. So it could maybe just kind of look at within that demography and then provide you with clinical trial patients. It could also have bias in terms of how the data is analyzed. So if, say, it's like this, if I have only read a certain number of books, I'll try to analyze everything only using those books, right? Because I have no other knowledge. The same thing happens with the AI model. So the whole thing comes down to how those models were initially created. So if you have a good model which have already taken into consideration all the factors, then the chances of bias are low. I wouldn't say it is eliminated, because as humans, we also have bias in the way how we do things, right? Machines also carry those bias because we as humans train them. So you need to be careful. There will still be bias. You just need to, as humans, need to review it carefully and ensure that you have taken care of those proactively. Explainable AI can definitely help. So there's governance mechanisms in terms of what data has been used, and they ensure that evaluations are performed, right? So there are evaluations now available to track how these models are grounded, how much factual they are. Does it even make sense, to be in kind of a simple words, right? Meaning some of these things. So the governance includes that. So if you're using any tools, if any provider comes to you and tells, hey, you should use this tool, I would say you should always ask some of these things and be sure that they are doing all of these things before you start using any of their tools.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Thank you so much for your wonderful insights, sir. So thank you for sharing your expertise and valuable perspectives with us today, and it was truly a pleasure to have you with us. Thank you once again, sir.
Thanks,
Thanks,
Rashna.
Pranab, for the
Thanks,
wonderful
Richa.
session. Thank
No
you.
worries. Thanks.
Thank you.
So as we move forward, it's my pleasure to introduce one more distinguished speaker for today's session, Mr. Vipul Gupta, Group Manager, Data Science, Market Access and Pricing at WNS Analytics based in Gurgaon, India. Mr. Gupta is a highly accomplished professional with over 16 years of experience in the healthcare and life sciences industry. He has been instrumental in leading data, analytics, and AI/ML-driven transformation initiatives with proven expertise in commercial analytics, supply chain, financial forecasting, and market access and pricing. His work has constantly focused on enabling innovation, operational excellence, and global collaboration across teams and organizations. Before we begin, I'd like to inform everyone that we'll be having a short Q&A session later, so please keep your questions ready. Now let me please join in welcoming Mr. Vipul Gupta, Group Manager of Data Science, Market Access and Pricing at WNS Analytics. Sir, the virtual stage is all over to you.
Vipul, you have to unmute yourself. We can't hear you. Not able to? Team, can you please make him co-host or help?
So could you please try now?
Don't think so. Rachna, can you try again?
Hey, sir. Yes, ma'am. Sir is the co-host now. He has to just unmute.
Okay, sure. Hello. No, we can't hear you. But you are unmute, that's for sure.
The mic is on, sir, but we are not able to hear you.
Yeah. Maybe if you can try without using the headphones. Mm.
Hello.
Hello.
Yes, sir, we can hear you, but it's a bit echoing, sir.
Yeah, just a bit.
Yes.
I muted my laptop. So is the echo coming now, or is it
No,
fine?
it's fine. It's
Yes,
fine,
sir.
Vipul. If you
Okay.
can turn on your video as well.
Yeah. I turn on the video from the laptop. So technical glitches happens in the world of AI as well. So
Yes.
so much. So I'll be using two technologies right now. I'll be using my phone as well as my laptop screen. Okay.
Yes, we can see your screen.
Sure. Thank you. Sorry for the technical glitch, everyone. And first of all, very good morning, very good afternoon to everyone. Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot for this invitation. I hope I'm not using my headsets. So yeah, right.
You're audible, Vipul. No problem at all. We can hear you loud and clear.
Okay, great. So yeah, uh, my introduction has already been given. So thanks for that sweet introduction. What I have been able to learn over time is that I've seen during my experience how data and AI are changing the way we make on most of the crucial decisions in pharma. That says how we are defining the prices of the medicine. And that's what I've picked as a topic for today. That we'll be talking about smarter pricing decisions. It is exactly about how we can use analytics and intelligent systems to make pricing, first of all, more scientific, second thing, more equitable, and then ultimately more patient centric. That's what we'll be covering today. Let me make it to the presentation mode. Yeah.
Yeah.
Did it turn to the presentation mode? Okay. I guess
Yes.
there's a little delay, but yeah. Okay. So I'll quickly cover what would be the agenda. I'll quickly talk about small or little details about pharma pricing, why it matters. Then we'll jump on to the role of analytics in pricing. I'll give you a small example as well for that. We'll then cover how AI and ML are impacting pricing decisions. What is the role and importance of AI and ML? What are the different techniques available. We'll share in relation to pricing analytics in terms of how we are using AI and ML across industry. And then we will also talk about some of the challenges which we are facing in AI adoption. And there would be certain actions which we need to tackle those challenges. That's something which we will be covering. And then I'd also like to talk about the career path. So I know there are people who are ready to join the industry and who are in early stages of the career who are a part of the session. So I wanted this to be a part of the session discussion. And that's why I've included this as a part of the agenda of the session. And lastly, I'll quickly touch upon how we should be looking at the future of pharma pricing industry, and that's how we'll end the session. First of all, I know this has been a long day for day one, so sorry for this if I am boring you, but I will try my level best to give you some engaging and insightful details about pharma pricing. That that's what my intent would be around the session. Okay, so let's quickly jump onto our topic and explore how data turns into insights and then insight turns into better pricing decisions. So before we look onto data and pricing decisions, we'll first understand why pricing matters in pharma. So when we talk about pricing, it's not just about profits. It's not just about profit margins. In pharma, pricing is actually a balancing act between innovation, access, and affordability. So what do we mean by innovation, access, and affordability areas? Every dollar on that price tag, what we are paying for that for a particular medicine, is actually a deciding factor who gets treated, when the treatment is given, and how sustainable it is. That actually revolves around the pricing decisions. So just to quote an example, a same drug may be costing, let's say, for $100 in India, the same drug can be costing around $300 in Germany and probably $500 in US. The reasons can be different. It might not be because of the molecule changes, but because of the system around it. So when we say the systems, it can be differential. So it can be different regulations across the globe. It can be income levels. It can be healthcare structures. So all these are the factors which can ultimately impact the purchasing power as well as the market dynamics, which will result in different pricing across the globe. So pricing actually defines whether healthcare system can sustain innovation and serve patients fairly. Think about this. If let's say you are a policymaker and if you're thinking about a cancer drug, would you price a cancer drug to recover your R&D cost quickly, or would you price it to make it affordable for every citizen? That's the particular kind of question where pricing analytics comes into picture. I know there is no perfect answer to it because we'll have to balance both. To the question which I asked, we'll have to balance both. We'll have to, from the organization perspective, we'll have to have the R&D costs covered as soon as possible, but we'll have to understand what is in it for the patient. So we should be empathetic as well from that perspective. So everything has to go in together, and that's where we have pricing in consideration. Okay. Let's quickly understand the pharma pricing landscape. Okay, When we are talking about the pricing landscape, let's quickly talk about the pricing ecosystem. Now, to make sense of this ecosystem, we first need to understand the pricing maze. There are a lot of elements in the pricing maze. From list price to net price, there are multiple layers of discounts, multiple layers of rebates, and reference linkages exists. If you see at the left hand side of the slide, you'll see the pharma price waterfall gross to net ratio. So on this, what we are trying to understand is there are multiple segments from list price to the net price. What is a list price? List price is the starting reference point at which the drug is, let's say, registered or launched. Net price is the price which is, let's say, in simple terms, the patient pays or the payer pays. So that's the net price after discounts and rebates. There are other pricing terms as well. So for example, there are reference pricing. So what is reference pricing? Reference pricing is benchmarking against the comparators. We have tender pricing in place. So when we are tendering against when we are doing competitive bidding, that for contracts, that's where tender pricing comes into picture. Then at the end, but not the least, we have value-based pricing. So value-based pricing are tied to clinical outcomes. Now, these are the various anecdotes which pricing ecosystem had, but we also have some key stakeholders which add value to the pricing decisions. Those 5 powerful key stakeholders are the manufacturer, the regulator, the payer, the hospital, and the patient. So each one of the stakeholder influences how the value is perceived and how the price is set. Okay. Now let's quickly look at how pricing impacts the first healthcare systems, second are payer budgets, and then the third are payer patient outcomes. So high price therapies can strain national health budgets. It can have limited funding for other essential services like diagnostics or preventive care. There can be fair pricing, which encourage continued R&D investments and access to breakthrough therapies like novel therapies, which can ensure long-term healthcare advancement. So that's something we need to look at. Differential or value-based pricing models can be there, which will be different for different countries at different income levels, on the basis of different outcomes which we want to achieve, and that can help balance innovation with affordability, promoting equitable access across populations. For example, let's say when a high-cost oncology drug enter the market, so health systems must reallocate funds or negotiate managed entry agreements to avoid budget overruns. That's one particular example for healthcare systems which we can look at while talking about how we should be looking at the pricing impact. Now, from the payer perspective, how does it impact? Let's say let's take an example that in a respiratory care, payers use price volume agreements. For example, for inhalers to manage spend while maintaining patient adherence programs. So that can be taken as a very good example how payer budgets would be impacted. So which means high launch prices or rapid uptake can create short-term financial pressures, very specifically in single payer system. Payers can often adopt risk sharing outcome-based or let's say indication-based contracts, and that will be used to mitigate uncertainty about clinical or economical value. It can be predictable, transparent pricing, which can help payers forecast expenditures and plan resources allocation for chronic disease management. So that can impact the payer budgets. Now, lastly but not the least, let's look at how it impacts the patient outcomes. Pricing can either enable or restrict access to life-saving treatments. So, for example, in terms of vaccines, let's say in terms of vaccines, what happens is we majorly have tiered pricing model. And why is it? Because there are high volumes involved in terms of vaccines. So high volumes guarantees are there, which enable widespread immunization in let's say LMIC countries, low and middle income countries, which help in improving population health outcomes globally. So that's something which will impact the patient outcome. So on the basis of that particular pricing example which I mentioned, the patient outcome can be evolved. There are some other mechanisms as well. Countries might be using external reference pricing, or when I say external reference pricing or international reference pricing, what I mean is it is when a country pegs price to others. That's called international reference pricing or external reference pricing. Now, there are countries who would be taking internal reference pricing as well into consideration for setting the prices. What is internal reference pricing? It is the price where prices are compared within the same market. So that's something which is there. And there are very complex interdependencies across markets on the basis of these reference pricing. Okay. So for example, US relies on payer-driven negotiations, and it's a free pricing market. And EU market emphasize on the HTA frameworks, and within EU, different markets have different, according to the different HTA bodies, they have set different pricing rules. So there are various pricing rules as well. So long story short, let's take an example to understand better. For instance, let's say Germany is referencing France prices. I'm just assuming it. Okay, I'm not quoting any reference pricing rule per se here. So let's say Germany is referencing France price, and France is referencing Spain's price. Okay, so if we are making a small change in Spain's price, it will eventually impact when the referencing will happen in terms of the pricing. So a small change in one, so eventually what's happening is a small change in one market is creating a ripple effect, and it is impacting the global markets. So the impact would be global across countries. Okay. So imagine what will happen if you are in a situation that you have spent 10-15 years, what we were discussing in the previous sessions, that in R&D, in drug development phase, you have already spent 10-15 years, and now you are at the ready stage for launch. Okay, just before the launch, you are at the ready stage, and you have been given an opportunity to decide a plan to launch this drug in 30 markets, let's say 25-30 markets. So, and when I say launch, it will be in terms of the timing as well as in terms of the pricing. So it'll be a very hefty, very heavy decision in terms of identifying the right launch scenario, launch sequence, and that's where I think analytics comes into picture, because what analytics does is analytics manages the complexity of what we have in terms of the portions available from the data we have. So when we talk about data, pharma has a lot of data available, right? We all know that pharma generates a lot of data, be it structured, be it unstructured. So when we say structured data, we will get sales records of the in-market drugs. We will get clinical outcomes. We will get the data from the various databases available in terms of policies, in terms of HTA rules, in terms of competitors. If we have for the organization and for the drug, then the competitor actions would be there. So there would be a large chunk of data which will be available to us. We can call it ocean of data available to us. But how we connecting that data is we are applying analytics to it. Analytics connect those dots. For example, at the data collection stage, we collect the data from various sources. For example, sales, market regulatory, competitive intelligence, etc. Then we connect those dots from individual data sources and apply analytical techniques like statistical modeling, pattern recognition, and many other techniques. We analyze that data and generate insights. On the basis of the insights we are generated, we finally will be able to make the pricing decision. And that particular pricing decision will be evidence based. So what backs is that earlier I had that particular data point. Now I have converted that data to evidence. That's the journey of data to evidence, which analytics does. Okay. That's the journey of analytics from data to evidence. What it is doing is it helps us stimulate how price in one country could affect another. So that's one particular example which we have already talked about. It can also forecast market reactions. It can also design the optimal launch sequence. We just now discussed that example, and many more. So yeah, those can be the real scenarios which can be discussed further. Imagine if you have to decide a launch price in 30 markets, what will you do? So each market will have its own international reference pricing, linkages, rules, and price ceilings. In terms of rules, we have price ceilings, we have delays in place, which will be there. So if that's there, what will happen is it will be a chaos, just like we discussed. So what we can do is we can then model it using analytics, and then we can generate a evidence-based precise model. Okay, that's something we can do using analytics. Now to cover that, I've brought a use case for you. That's global launch optimization. Since we were talking about this itself, so let's continue with this example itself and understand how we can optimize the global launch sequence. So let's say a pharma company was launching a drug for novel oncology therapy across 25 markets. Okay, so what would be the question in terms of the manufacturer's mind is, what sequence will give me the best revenue? That too without triggering IRP penalties. So that's something which is a risk. IRP is a risk which everybody would want to cater, everybody would want to mitigate. Okay, So to answer this question, what we can do is we can use tools and technologies. So in terms of tools and technologies, we can build a web or Excel based simulator tool. The tool can be used, Python can be used in terms of IRP simulator. That's a language per se. For now, for your understanding, I would say, don't think it like if you're not aware or you have not worked on Python, it's not very difficult to learn. It is easy, and just like we discussed in the previous sessions as well, nowadays even the development as well is kind of to an extent is automated till the time we are having an understanding of how to read that particular documentation or that particular tool. So our analysis or our understanding is more important rather than building a code at that particular point of time. Okay. So coming back to the analytical approach which I was talking about, what we can do is we can create the model. Okay, the model will have the cross market price dependencies, regulatory timelines, revenue projections, all those intricacies aligned to it. Okay, and once everything is embedded in that tool, what we can do is we can run the sequence, where we can run the simulations. I've given you one small example here to run the sequence of simulations, but there can be multiple examples of simulations which can be run, and even you can do comparison of different algorithms, simulation algorithms, and then find the best fit model for you in terms of launch sequence. So that's the next step which we can think of and we can talk about. But yeah, uh, if you're talking about implementing it, we can generate and out of those multiple, it can be thousands, but it depends what's the business need and how much time do we need to spend on, because every simulation run would require some time to run that particular sequence scenario. Okay, even if it is a web-based tool, that time, the hardware tool or hardware will take some time to run that particular tool. So that particular time would be a constraint. So you need to understand what's the best fit sequence scenario or iterations you need to make to get the best launch sequence result. Now, if I talk about result, for sure, you will be able to get some uh, positive results in terms of revenue realization and IRP spillover risks. But beyond numbers, what this model will do. So this is about understanding the particular use case. But what this model has done, what it did is, beyond numbers, it was able to expand my access faster as a company, and as a company, I am able to price more confidently now because I have a backing of evidence. When I say evidence, in terms of evidence, I will have from that model, I will have the confidence level that the model will be throwing me that per se 98%. I have this 98 or 95% or 98% confidence on this particular launch sequence that this will give this amount of revenue saving, revenue gain or revenue saving, whatever you call it, and lower the IRP risk. So that's the kind of confidence, or that's the kind of evidence you are generating from uh, the technique which you have used over here. Okay, that's actually the power of blending market expertise with data driven foresight. Now what analytics did is analytics told us what happened and why. Now, the real game changer is so we already talked about ML in that particular specific example, but now what real game changer is when we implement AI on top of it. Okay. Now, the journey from analytics, analytics, ML, and AI would be kind of, we are moving from, let's say, descriptive analytics to predictive and to prescriptive insights. Okay. AI and ML. So let's take that one step further. Okay. And they will tell us what will happen next and what to do about it. So if I talk about AI in pricing, so in pricing perspective, AI can predict most likely price approval range based on therapeutic analogs, STA outcomes, and market dynamics using regression algorithms. It can also create the dynamic pricing models, okay, by adjusting tender bids in real time using reinforcement learning algorithms that adapt competitive behavior. It can also cluster pairs by behavior, budget constraints, and formulary patterns using unsupervised learning. On top of it, it can also analyze tender documents using NLP. We'll talk about that particular scenario in a little detail. Now, with Gen AI, what we can do is using LLMs. LLM is large language models. We can simulate market shocks. What are market shocks? For example, let's say there's a scenario. What if a new biosimilar enters 10% cheaper? That's the what if scenario. Okay, that's the market shock which the company would have. So Gen AI will be able to cater that. Or for example, what if the HTA agency changes the criteria? Okay, so that's the kind of instances in terms of what if scenarios we can look at. What AI can do is AI can help us prepare before the reality hits. Okay, now how many of you think AI will replace pricing managers? Okay, I know the audio is not working for you guys. So yeah, let me answer that. So actually, AI won't replace the pricing managers. What will happen is there would be people in the pricing manager role who would be using AI effectively and efficiently. They will actually replace those who don't use it. Okay, that's how the AI adaptability and transformations are happening. Now let's quickly look at the example of tender pricing model, which is we are using AI based tender pricing model. So what will happen? So from that tender pricing model, what we can look at is what we are doing in tender pricing model is, let's say we have a large chunk of historical data available with us. When we say large chunk of historical data, it will be in terms of the tenders which were received, what was the win or loss record for each tender, what were the payer types, what was the price elasticity, what was the final price agreement which happened in the tender negotiations, what was the price quoted and what was the final price agreement. So everything would be there in terms of historical data. That's what you're talking about in terms of the historical data which is being fed to the system. Okay, now once the historical data is fed to the system into, let's say, a gradient boosting model algorithm. On the basis of the data input, we trained that model. We did the model training. Okay. The AI now learned some patterns on the basis of the historical data. For example, which price points typically win which tenders, which sort of tenders, or let's say from which therapeutic areas. There will be different therapeutic areas, or there would be different types of pairs. So can be on multiple scenarios, can be multiple scenarios can be made from that perspective. But yeah, ideally what we want to understand and what we want to get as an outcome is that AI has started learning from the historical data. Okay. Now, once the model gave the, so after learning, what we'll do is we'll test that particular model. Okay. First is the learning phase, then is the testing phase of that particular model. We'll then test that particular model. Once the model starts giving us the satisfactory results on the test cases, then we'll start making predictions from that particular model. Once we are making the prediction, we'll be able to identify, or we'll be able to find the optimal bid price. That's one thing. The right price at which we can win the tender, right? That was our one of the goal. Now that's the first thing which we mentioned. The second thing is what is the confidence interval and what is the cushion which we can have in the particular price band. That's something which the model can give us, or the likelihood percentages for each tender opportunity which we are going to feed. So that kind of outcome or output we can get from that particular model. Okay. Now finally, in terms of business impact, what will we get as an outcome? I can right away say what we will get is a significant improvement in the bid success rates. What we can think of, what we have discussed right now is, let's say, think of it as teaching a system to learn what combination of price, timing, and conditions win the contracts. That's all we did in the whole scenario. Okay. And then we are applying those lessons to predict the prices for the newer opportunities which we are going to get, so that we can win the tenders for the upcoming opportunities. Simply speaking, what we taught the system was price wins me the tender as an organization, right? So here we have talked about how AI can help us in various pricing models, pricing techniques. Now, since we have talked a little about AI, there are certain challenges from ethical perspective, from regulatory perspective, as well as some practical challenges. So this is the flip side of the coin, right? AI, we can agree that AI in healthcare is powerful, and it is the next thing which we have already started working as an industry. But at the same time, it must be transparent, it must be fair and explainable. We discussed this in the previous session as well. So I'll reiterate that transparency, fairness, and explainability, those are some things which are very, very important for us to cater those challenges, right? To overcome those challenges. When I talk about transparency and explainability, if we have a black box AI model, there will be accountability gaps. We don't know what's happening inside the black box, right? And as a user, I will not be able to have that confidence on that particular model if that model is not giving me a transparent response. So right now what's happening is, if you're let's say if you're using an OpenAI tool, for example, if you use Claude AI, so what it gives is, it'll give you the response as well as, so let's say you have thrown a query to the tool, AI tool, it'll give you the response as well as the code as well as the processing which has happened at the backend. So it'll give you all the three aspects. So in terms of transparency, I think it is a big win. In terms of explainability, it'll be a big win. But still there are certain gaps. So that's why we must say explainable AI techniques are very much essential. Okay. Now there's another challenge, which is data privacy and security. There are certain guidelines which we need to follow, HIPAA guidelines, GDPR guidelines, and other data protection, imposing stricter regulation requirements on how patient and commercial data can be collected and shared. So that's something which is we must be very much aware of. So AI at times, since unless we are building a novel tool internally in the organization, if we are talking about the generic tools which are available as an OpenAI tools, various OpenAI tools in the pharma industry, those particular tools cannot be used with that particular data set, I would say. As a placebo data or as a dummy data, you can use those tools, but that will not give you the desired result as well. So there is a thin line how you can use it and how you should avoid using it, and how you should be aware what to use, when to use, and how to use. Okay. Now talking about regulatory scrutiny, pricing algorithms are facing increasing oversight around fairness in access, patient safety implications, and potential anti-competitive behavior. Regulatory frameworks are evolving globally. So for example, regulators like EMA, FDA are increasingly asking questions that can we explain why the model chose this price. So I'm not sure, in one of the previous session we were talking about that the regulators are more aligned towards adopting AI more than what the industry, in terms of manufacturers or the industry, has accepted or started implementing or using it as per se. So regulators are the first ones who have started using it, who have started understanding it, and also started challenging it at the same time. So it has become a lot more difficult when you get that kind of challenge from the regulators. They're also challenging us, is it free of bias? So we also need to look at if there is biasness or not in terms of the data which is being fed in the model. Okay. In terms of the regulatory guidelines, in terms of pricing regulations, data privacy, all these questions are being asked by the regulators. So those are some things which we need to. Okay, I thought there was a question.
No, I have muted everyone. Vipul, please go ahead.
Okay, thank you. So yeah, and last but not the least, human in the loop. That's something which is very important. AI should augment, not replace human judgment. That's very critical. Critical pricing decisions require domain expertise. So domain experts would be very much relevant at all the time, because you are the SMEs of the domain. You know in and out about the domain. Okay. And at the same time, you should be able to do ethical reasoning about the questions which you should be asking the AI models, so that you can answer or you can answer the regulators. You can stay relevant in front of the stakeholders, I would say. That's where I think we should always follow the core principle that AI can guide pricing strategies with data-driven insights, but humans must retain decision-making authority. And why I say so is because of the challenges which AI cannot handle, but human intervention is always required in that particular loop. And that's where I would say it is very much required as uh, for patient welfare, for market fairness, for ensuring ethical considerations. Okay, so that was about the AI policies. Now, on this particular slide, you can see I've tried to jot down the whole pharma pricing into 4 different buckets in terms of how you should be looking at your skills, how you should be developing your skills, how you should be looking at the tools, and what should be the career pathway you should be looking at. So the intersection of pharmaceutical domain knowledge and advanced analytics creates exciting career pathways, I would say. Success would require a blend of all. When I say blend of all, I mean the technical capabilities as well as business acumen and a deep understanding of healthcare ecosystem. Now, if we say in these 4 buckets, you have core technical skills, you have analytics capabilities, you have domain expertise, as well as AML specialization. So there would be multiple things under each broad category, but largely speaking, the word of pricing analytics, in terms of pricing analytics, I would say when I say uh, pricing analytics is majorly about data, so you must have complete understanding or you must be a data expert. No. So first of all, you need to understand what brings you to pricing analytics. The first thing is your student foundation, which you have already done. So or you are currently work in progress mode from that perspective. So you are gaining that domain knowledge from your respective colleges, universities, or programs, wherever you are. At the start of your career, what you would do is you will get on job means at the start of your career, you will get on job trainings, but to be ready to get on job trainings, you need to learn the basics of some of the tools which are very much required in the industry. For example, get an understanding of Python, Power BI, uh, Tableau, SQL. These are on top of your domain knowledge, which will help you understand better the data which you are working at. If you are working in the field of data-driven analytics or AI driven field, I know the whole industry has elements of data and AI, but in some pockets it will be higher, in some pockets it will be lower. So some of the aspects, I would say, in pricing analytics, the major role would be understanding the data as well, and the basics for sure would be your domain knowledge, but understanding of data would be required. So if I talk about pricing analytics, you will have to have that understanding. You will have to combine your these technical knowledge which you can gain. It's not very difficult to access those courses. These are publicly available. Some free courses also are available. So you can get those trainings done and be industry ready. Okay. And then don't forget your domain knowledge about HTA, how the pair behaves, what are the reference pricing rules. Read about that. Read about the different papers available. What is the global pricing strategy, global pricing policy, GPD norms. Those will help you shape the real world decisions, and that will be impacting in future, that will be impacting millions of patients as well when you are working in the industry. So you're going to impact millions of lives. So be ready with all your arms and ammunitions. That's what I say to my colleagues as well, to my juniors as well within the organization, that we should be having all the arms and ammunitions ready so that we have to apply it. So whenever we have to apply it, it is available at our ease. So we should be at ease to use it whenever or wherever. Okay. So there are multiple roles for which we can say those are emerging. The specialized growth which you can look at and then go to the leadership position. So for example, pricing and market access analyst would be the starting role. If you are trying to get into data science from here, then commercial data scientist can be a career pathway. If you're trying to move directly to AI from here in the pharma industry, AI consultant can be the role. Even the product strategy team can be there, where you can support the product strategy. So all of these roles are open, and all of these roles would need analytical mind. Okay. So if you love data and want to make healthcare fairer, this is your space. That's what I would say. Before ending the session, I'd like to cover what is the future of pharma pricing. Let's end with a glimpse of what is in future for us as an industry, I would say. So pharma pricing is shifting focus from price-based to value-based models. We've talked about value-based a lot of times in our current discussion, as well as in the previous discussions today during the whole day. So uh, that's where what you pay is tied to how much benefit the therapy is delivering. Okay, that's what is the future of pharma pricing is. Imagine real-time forecasting models. So we have also talked about digital twins that can simulate entire healthcare systems and even personalized pricing. I really enjoyed the discussion which we were having earlier. We talked about these particular aspects in our previous discussion as well. So I will not talk much about it now. But yeah, these are the future of pharma pricing, where we are going to look at, where, for example, your payments are done, how the medicine works for you. Okay. We are entering a world where pricing isn't about cost anymore. It's about measurable patient value. So value is the term, or patient value is the term, to be precise. If I look at it from that perspective, that's where we are trying to look at. And those who can bridge, I would say, science, those who can bridge empathy. That's something will define the next era of pharma. That's something which I had for you today. I'll end with this particular quote, that artificial intelligence is not a substitute for human intelligence. It is a tool to amplify human creativity and ingenuity. That's what a quote which I really like. I chose this quote specifically because this is the age of AI, but we still want to ensure that human intelligence is very important. Okay, we have heard some of these examples in the previous sessions as well, just like that. So yeah, I would also emphasize on the same thing, that human intelligence, human creativity, that's something which you guys should be focusing at. That was all from my side. Thank you very much. Open for questions.
Thanks, Vipul, for such nice and practical session. I would say, team, please ask questions. Ask your questions to Vipul as much as you can.
I think people would be. This was the last session of the day. So
No, Vipul, we have 2 more days to go. If they're tired now, how will
no,
they break next 2 days?
I was saying for the day.
No. So people have started writing questions.
Yes, ma'am. Can I take
Rachna,
up
if you
the
can,
questions?
please.
Yes, ma'am. We have a question from Sharmila. How can budding entrepreneurs in pharma or AI sector identify unmet needs or market gaps in healthcare pricing, and what tools or frameworks would you recommend for this analysis?
So while we are talking about unmet needs and these aspects, when I say so, we look at so this is a very attached lining from pricing perspective, I would say, to market access. So in terms of the linkage, I would say it links to market access when we are talking about unmet needs. This is a journey which starts from the drug discovery level, and the pricing analytics ends till the mature stage, till the lifespan of the drug ends. But yeah, when we talk about drug discovery level, when we are talking about market access needs, unmet needs, so we are doing, there are multiple I would say analysis, cost utilization analysis, in terms of your HEOR scope. You will have a lot of studies which can be done from that perspective. So your budget impact analysis is there, which you can do to understand what would be the impact of a particular budget. You have the quality of life years assessment you can do on the basis of the drug. For that particular drug, you can understand the patient level data, what is the need of the patient, and then on the basis of that particular need, you can work on the solutions accordingly. I'm not sure, this was a very, very broad topic, so I was trying to cover multiple aspects into it. Hope I was able to answer as per your expectations.
Yes, sir. And we have one more question from Mirza Aminur. Sir, as a PharmD graduate, which field has better future for us, HEOR or data analytics, and how are these two fields related to each other in pharmaceutical industry?
Sorry, your voice just break down.
They're asking Vipul which field is better, HEOR or data analytics, and how are these 2 fields related to each other in the pharmaceutical industry?
Okay, so let me give you my background. I would say you will I will not directly answer this question, but yeah, when I give my introduction of my background, probably you will understand how to answer the question yourself. So I am a computer engineer by education, did my MBA in marketing and IT, and did a course in data science and analytics from IIM. So nowhere in my education journey, pharma was related. But yes, what I'm doing right now is why I am associated with pharma pricing and analytics is I understood the domain. So where you guys have an edge from me per se is you have an edge of understanding the domain thoroughly. I might not be knowing the concepts to that extent which you guys know, because I I have not gone to the class which you have gone to. I've gone to a different class, and I'm from a old school, different generation as well. So my mind is a little slow as well from that perspective, probably as per.
No, we can't say that. No. No, but yes, we get the answer, and people have been asking such questions to all the experts. People, I mean, the common answer is to each his own. Do what interests you. You can learn along the way if you have the learning agility. That's all we can say. It doesn't matter to which school you are going, right? So it's completely up to individual.
Agree.
Yeah.
Can't agree more to that.
Yes, sir. And we have next question. If our competitors are also using AI for tender pricing, does it limit our advantage and reduce how confident we should be in our analysis?
No, I would say if you're using the analytics and tender pricing, so I would say this is a topic wherein if you have confidence on a particular tool and technique, so basically what you need to understand is how to understand that particular concept. Basic question is uh, you you don't go from the top, go from the bottom. So understand what I am trying to get, what is my requirement from that particular tool or from that particular technology, what my requirement is. So that's particular intent identification is very important. Be it tender pricing, be it revenue management, be it launch pricing, whatever it is, wherever you are applying the AI model, the AI tool or ML, wherever you're applying whatever technique, the important thing is, are you able to identify or are you able to analyze the result which you are getting from that? If you're able to analyze the result which you're getting from that, and then after understanding that particular result, are you able to enhance that particular model? That's something which is very important in this case, I would say.
Yes, sir. And we have one more question. Akanksha says, thank you for a detailed and insightful session. What challenges do you see in the age of AI with data analysis, and how should we use AI when it comes to data analysis?
Okay, so yeah, I already covered the challenges while using AI. That's something which we should be focused at. So I'll not repeat everything which I covered in the session from the perspective of the challenges, but yeah, transparency is something which we discussed, that AI when we are implementing AI, we should be very transparent in terms of what we are having. There are certain challenges in terms of the data privacy. That's something which is very uh, regulatory compliances and challenges are there. Those we should be adhering to while we are implementing any AI tool, or I would say building any particular AI tool. So the data is available. The data is freely available on lots of sites. But yeah, if the data is anonymized, you're free to build those models and tools. If you have some very sensitive information in that particular data source, you must be very vigilant.
Thanks, Vipul, for the insightful answers. So, Rachna, you have closing remarks for today. Maybe we can close today's session. Such a wonderful and engaging day it has been. So, over to you, Rachna.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, Mr. Vipul Gupta, for sharing your expertise and valuable perspectives with us today. It was truly a pleasure to have you with us, and thank you once again. So, as we come to the conclusion of today's session of HEOR and RWE Vanguard 2025, I'd like to express heartfelt thanks to all our distinguished speakers for their time, wisdom, and expertise. And a big thank you as well as to our organizing committee, to our wonderful audience for making this event such a success. Thank you, and I wish you all a wonderful evening ahead. And I hope you all to see again tomorrow. Thank you.
9:30 a.m.
Thank you all for
IST
joining.
sharp.
Yes,
Yes, ma'am.
9:30 a.m. IST sharp. Exactly. Tomorrow we'll see you all, and it was a wonderful day. I'm seeing that our audience is constant with us even after the lunch sessions. Even after the lunch in the sessions, our audience is there, and they're very enthusiastic to learn. Thank you very much, guys, for joining us, and we'll see you tomorrow then. And tomorrow, all the presenters be ready, because parallelly from 1 o'clock we will have your presentations as well. Okay, so the people who have the presentations, they will be just coming, present, and come back here to this conference tomorrow. Okay, so see you guys tomorrow. Thank you very much, and it was a wonderful day. And we are now wrapping up this. So thank you very much. Thank you, Rishaji. Thank you, Rachna.
Thank you,
Thank you, everyone.
everyone.
We'll see
Bye-bye.
you then. Bye bye.
Thank you,
Bye.
sir.
Bye. Bye.
Thank you,
Bye.
ma'am.